Appalachia, the Deep South, Midwest, and Eastern Europe will make you rethink how you see white privilege. These are some of the most impoverished areas, just in the world. Literally in Appalachia, I've found out that people literally drink Mountain Dew more than water because water isn't easily accessible at all, in that entire area, which makes no sense to me because I feel like I see so many rivers going through and all this shit. But yeah, no, apparently they can't access water, so they have to drink fucking soda with a gajillion grams of fucking sugar in it. And this is the thing. We seem to forget that we are victims under different systems. So, are any of these people victims under white supremacy? No, not really. No. I think both white people and a lot of people of color seem to think that, the whole thing about white privilege is that, oh, if you are white, your life is automatically easier. No. That's not what it is. Now, that is what it can translate to be many times, right? Because you are not being persecuted because of the color of your skin, right? But you're still being persecuted as a poor person. You're still being persecuted for a lack of education. A lot of these people, you say that, well, they voted for it. Yeah, I mean, but first of all, what choices do they really have? Because neither party gives a fuck about them. At least one party is saying stuff about how they care about them. Obviously, the Republicans don't, right? But you have to understand from that aspect. Also, when the access to education is so few and far in between, we cannot understate that. And especially when I hear liberals and leftists talking about how you should just educate yourself. What type of dumbass are you to say some shit like that? You should understand how systems make it hard for you to be educated, for you to actually access information that would make you aware of who's really oppressing you in a situation, because the oppressor needs that information to be hard to access, or for that information to be hidden behind propaganda like the Red Scare. And I realized too, again, as a black kid who grew up in an upper middle class, I went to a private school, my life has always been better than all these people. My life likely will just be better than all of these people. And they may be white, right? They might have white privilege, but my life will just be better because I have the class advantage. And I think we have to rethink the way that we see white privilege, at least the way some people see white privilege, because there are a lot of white people who get so offended the second they hear white privilege. And it's bro, I'm not saying your life was fucking easy. I'm just saying that you didn't have to worry about the skin color part. And then also a lot of people who just use white privilege as a blanket statement, oh, you're poor, but you got white privilege. How does that work out? You're being ignorant. You're being really ignorant right now.
Okay, the real reason they're removing sociology as part of the core curriculum in so many red states is because once you understand sociology, you can use it to explain so much of human and political behavior. In my social psychology class, we learned about this thing called the complexity extremity effect. And this effect basically states that the less direct experience you have of individuals from different groups than yours, the more extreme your judgments are going to be about that group. And I feel like this explains so much of the political polarization that we see today because we are getting increasingly isolated from people that are different than us. For example, a lot of the conservative legislatures that are passing laws that are restricting the rights of queer kids and, trans kids, how many of those politicians do you think have friends or know people that are actually queer and trans that they interact with on a semi-regular basis? Probably not a lot, I would go out and say. And we see the same thing with incel culture too. The men that have the most extreme judgments and most misogynistic judgments of women, how many of those men do you think are friends with women in real life or interact with women on a daily basis that aren't in their family, And I would guess probably not a lot. And in my own life, I've seen that the people who are different than me and they have like, a diverse friend group, like ideologically diverse, racially, they're friends with people across the gender spectrum. They're the most accepting people because they have a lot of experience, one-on-one experience with people that are different than them. And I think this is a root cause of political polarization, because as we increasingly are getting more and more isolated from other people that are different than us, this causes us to like form even more extreme judgments about people, because we don't actually interact with these people that are different than us in real life. And I have a similar experience. For my 4 years in college, like I didn't really have a lot of conservative friends, and so that caused me to have this like really rigid schema of what conservatism looked like and what the average conservative person like thinks and does. But then, I'm applying to law school, and I've talked to a lot of conservative like pre-law students and students over at law schools that are conservative, and it gave me a more nuanced view and kind of just showed that like not everyone in one group is a monolith, which I know sounds really obvious, but it's hard to realize that if you don't actually go out and meet people and talk to the people that are different than you. And so knowing that, knowing this effect, this one single thing that we learned in class, I could use that to interpret the current state of politics and come up with solutions. So for me, now that I know that I'm going to form judgments, more extreme judgments about people that I know less about, that is going to make me go out and talk to more people that are different than me, so I'm not susceptible to this very human condition, right? This very human effect, because it's a psychological thing. And I feel like the reason why, conservatives don't really want people to know that is because if you do, then they can't prey on your fear of the other, right? Because that's the kind of the platform that they run on, is like, oh, we don't want this group of people to take over our country, and you can replace this group with queer people, immigrants, whatever, whoever is their target, right? Because if they know the yeah, you guys know what I'm saying, but yeah.
Most British and Europeans don't know this, but parts of England are poorer than southern Italy and Sicily, which is insane. Bro, England as a whole, I think, is poorer than some of America's poorest states. You take London out of the equation, it is straight up third world conditions. Fuck off, bro. We aren't that poor. No, absolutely. England absolutely is that poor. What do you mean? I don't know why you're getting offended at this, because America has parts of America that are also resembling third world like conditions. I don't know why the fuck you would get mad at this. It is just our government's literally robbing us fucking blind. It has nothing to do with you or your personal experience at all. It had everything to do with mismanagement and horrifying austerity that your own fucking leaders have subjected you to, similar to what has happened in the United States of America. This is neoliberalism without any sort of contest in the post-Cold War, in the aftermath of the Cold War. Neoliberalism, uncontested, has basically created colonial conditions internally. It has basically brought back the colonial ambition and rampant exploitation back into the fucking mainland.
The United Kingdom used to be one of the wealthiest empires in history, but today it's drowning in debt, unable to pay its bill, and also struggling to feed its own people. And here's why. And apart from London as well as Southeast England, the country as a whole is stagnant, struggling, as well as shrinking. And England already has sky-high taxes, and it doesn't want to raise that anymore. And it also doesn't export much compared to other countries like Japan, China, or Germany. And the sad part here is that England doesn't have much natural resources left as well, and the only thing it can do now is borrow. And in 2008, the UK borrowed more than $141 billion to bail out its banks. And over the next 15 years, England would have no real growth, investment, or stimulus. And many economists call this the lost decade. And disaster after disaster also piled onto the country. Brexit cut foreign investments by 25%, and COVID added another $300 billion in debt. And we also can't forget about the Ukraine war, energy shortage, as well as another $100 billion in borrowing for emergencies. And as a result, the UK has to pay roughly $100 billion every single year just on the interest for its loans. And this also means less funding for healthcare, schools, as well as infrastructure. And you can say that the UK doesn't really produce anything anymore. Instead, it's simply borrowing. And as a result, the country is slowly dying.
So first, the face of poverty in reality looks very different than some people's perception.
Thank you.
Well, let me put a finer point on it. They think poverty is black and Latino and Hispanic people in this country. But poverty also includes a lot of white people in America.
If you spot yourself in this video, you got to let me know in the comments section. And I'll tell you guys what, I mean, I know there aren't that many jobs out here and people are struggling economically, but man, this area is just so beautiful. You know, I've got to admit, I'm kind of envious because I just love being out around nature. And I mean, look what these people, when they come outside, look what they get to see every day. I'm not sure which river that is, but I mean, you got the hills there, a forest, a river. It's just beautiful. Excuse me, sir. What river is that back there?
This is the Kentucky.
Oh, that's the Kentucky,
like
right?
East Branch or something like that.
I got you.
Branch.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Sure.
Oh, snap. Look at that little road going straight up the mountain there. I'm headed that way. I'm over here not far from City Hall. Got the railroad tracks over there. And look how the river just comes right up here. I got a little country home over there. Call me crazy, just a wild guess. I'm guessing this guy might be into lawn care. Guys, if there's one thing you need to remember about Beattyville, it's that Bob loves Sharon, okay? Now, they probably already broke up, but somewhere deep in his heart, I'm sure that Bob still loves Sharon. Looks like somebody had a quick pick-me-up. I bet that was probably Bob after Sharon left him for his best friend. Well, heck, I don't even need to put a map on the screen now. Somebody painted it right here on the ground. There's Lee County, Kentucky. That's where we are right now. Hometown video? There's no way this is a video rental shop. No way. Movies, cell phones, games. Oh, door's locked. All right, let's learn a little bit about Lee County. It was named in 1870 for General Robert E. Lee, 1807 to 1870. He was a fearless man among men. As a soldier, he had no superior and few equal. West Point graduate, declined command of U.S. Army and resigned 1861. Named military advisor to CSA President.
I am equally, if not more so, fascinated by Appalachian poverty than I am extreme wealth. And I am half Appalachian myself, and I've spent my entire adult life here, but it still never ceases to amaze me. It's my opinion that Appalachian culture is incredibly unique in some good ways, but also in some incredibly stifling ways. If you don't mind hills in every single direction, then the topography can be incredibly beautiful. It has been my experience that no one ever leaves the hills of Appalachia, and if they do, it's not for very long at all. If you're very fortunate, you might be able to go to Myrtle Beach or Gatlinburg once a year, and those seem to be the only vacation destinations for Appalachians. I asked my Appalachian husband why no one he knows has ever left here, and he says it's because they're happy here. It's the best place on earth.
I'm from Africa. I never seen a homeless white person. Yeah, I'm shocked, man. Because in Africa, they tell us everything is in America, and then when we come here, yeah, it's just shocking. Nothing against you. It's just shocking to see me, like, you know what I mean? Yeah, all right. We got to go to 35th.
85% of welfare and food stamp moochers are white, live in southern red states, and vote for Republicans.
There are no organizations dedicated to the welfare of rural whites.
How many people have noticed that just about every Democratic policy that white conservatives despise, they benefit most from?
That welfare was created for white people.
You guys heard elected Republicans are fighting with the Trump administration on the background because some of the Trump executive orders are hurting Republican.
If you're white and you had anyone in your family serve in the military in the past 400 or so years, you got welfare. The United States issued 500,000 land grants before it passed the Homestead Act.
So I posted about white folks on food stamps, and one thing I kept seeing was that welfare was created for white people. I knew that it was created during the New Deal, so I did some more research because I didn't really know the whole story, and I thank you guys for responding and helping me learn stuff. So during the Great Depression is when we saw the beginning of things like Social Security, unemployment insurance. But here's the kicker. When Franklin Roosevelt built those programs, he had to make deals with Southern Democrats in Congress, the same folks who were big fans of Jim Crow, to get the support of these racist white Southern politicians the programs were designed to exclude farm workers, domestic workers, jobs held overwhelmingly by Black, Latino, and Indigenous people. So right from the start, Black and brown families were pushed out of benefits so that white people could get them. Then we move forward to the 1960s, and there's this war on poverty. It finally opened up welfare programs more broadly, and that's when food stamps became permanent. Well, permanent, we don't know what Trump's going to do to them, but they lasted a long time. And guess what? The minute more Black and brown families started accessing this help, the politics shifted. Welfare got a new image and a new target. By the 1980s and 90s, with Ronald Reagan and his gang, they pushed the welfare queen myth. That's a racist dog whistle meant to turn public opinion against safety nets by blaming Black women for poverty that white policies created. That's the truth, you guys.
And the only reason I know that is because I made so much money last year, the rich whites told me they sang at a cocktail party. And I'm not with that shit. And I stood with them in line like all of us Americans are required to do in a democracy. Nobody skips the line to vote. And I listened to them. I listened to them say naive, poor white people things. Man, Donald Trump's gonna go to Washington and he's gonna fight for us. I'm standing there thinking in my mind, you dumb motherfucker. You are poor. He's fighting for me. And they all looked at me. They could tell who I was voting for just as easily as I could tell who they were voting for. But do you guys know what we all had in common? Not a single one of us looked like we felt good about what we had to do in that booth. We were just doing our goddamn duty.
How often you guys travel through small towns and everything, but every time I do, I look around and I think like, well, what is life like right here for like the people just living here? And I get a feeling, and that feeling is never good. It never feels good. And I just can't help but keep thinking to myself, like, who the fuck is looking out for these people, right? Who is on their side? Who is fighting for them, really? And it's absolutely nobody at all. And that fucking sucks. It just hurts my heart. And I've made videos about this before, and I keep getting a bunch of people in my comments saying, like, they don't deserve any help. They keep voting against their best interests. But, like, for a second, like, think, why would anybody vote against their best interests? Like, what leads a person to do that? You know? Like, these people have grown up in all conservative towns, right? Their family is all conservative. Their generational family is all conservative. Their teachers are all conservative. Like, what the hell do you expect from them? Like, what do you really, like, want them to do about that? You know? And then they go online and they see stuff from the left and they're like, oh, people are getting canceled for things that I believe. And they don't understand the beliefs. They don't understand the systems behind it. And they're like, okay, that must be outrageous, right? And so they just distance them further and further away from us. And we need to help them. People need to help them. These are the workers of the country, right? We cannot leave almost the entire working class out of the leftist movement. And that is just absolutely ridiculous. If your reason for not helping the people who absolutely need your help is because they disagree with you, you need to rethink all of your priorities. I will never stop fighting for these people.
Why, oh why do poor white people vote against themselves time and time again? They vote for Trump and the other MAGA politicians only to have every promise broken, prices go up, social supports evaporate. Here's why. First, remember what I talked about recently, the psychological wage of whiteness. That term was coined by W.E. Du Bois to describe poor white folks being paid with social status rather than decent living conditions. They're convinced by the elites that they're better than black folks, better than immigrants, Latinos, LGBTQ folks. They're convinced that being white puts them in the same league as the elites. Of course, the elites know otherwise, but the poor whites buy it because they're grasping at straws. Second, they are convinced that the people they're supposedly better than are the big threat in their lives. Not the rich, not the corporations or the politicians, but immigrants, black folks, welfare queens, LGBTQ, criminals, you know, the usual scapegoats. Third, the elites promise protection to poor white folks. A politician comes along and says, I'll keep those people in their place, or I'll kick them out, or I'll lock them up. Or, more politely, I'll defend your values. They don't say, I'll make your life better. Well, they say it, they just don't mean it. They'll say, I'll make sure they don't get ahead of you. Fourth, They vote for the punishment, not the policy. When a law gets passed that slashes public housing or school funding or food aid, they think, good, that'll stop those lazy freeloaders. And they do some mental gymnastics that make them believe it's worth losing those things for their own families in order to see those problematic Black people and immigrants and so forth being punished. It gets to a point where just seeing those guys being punished is reward enough, which is pretty sick, but that's how behavior works. Their housing, schools, and groceries are on the chopping block too, but they blame that on Biden. Always a scapegoat. They get hit by the same policies they were told would punish the others, and they blame the wrong people. The system fails them, but they've been trained to blame the scapegoats, not the cause, which is the rich people, the people they voted for. So they think the problem is still those people, not the fact that they were personally manipulated by the people they voted for. They're basically saying, I'll take the hit as long as you don't help them, or worse, as long as you hurt them. That is the psychological wage Du Bois was talking about, the trade-off between material security for racial status. And that's a crying shame, folks. One share, like, save, and comment shows that you care about white people taking responsibility for racism in America. This work is important to me, and I want to keep doing it. If you want to support me, consider a donation of any size to coffee.com/Kelly Snyder. And yeah, spelling is important. Get curious.
Oh, white people aren't just going to magically stop killing innocent people in public. Are you crazy? We don't like to ask Black people many questions because the answers scare us. But they've been telling us that we don't know what to do with the violence that gave us all of our privilege in all these suburbs. For years, they've been telling us that white supremacy is relying on being seen without fault, so it erases its own history. And they've been telling us that our society is built to worship white supremacy, so it blames video games, movies, the fact that these white weirdos are bullied, right? When none of that has anything to do with the root issue of why we're all obsessed with horror movies or why this country is a war zone for all of our citizens and all of their children in it. The story's always been the same. Racist is bullied, he hurts all the Black people around him. Now it's racist is bullied, he hurts whoever is closest around him. And Black people have been telling us for 400 years that we are easily persuaded into far-right extremist groups because we can't address the cause of our issues. And this is why we like very little people, ugly little people who had no choice but to be racist just simply based on their looks, whether it's Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, the H word. White people become racist when they're not able to get anything out of the society that promised them the world. And this is the saddest part of all of this, is that Nick Fuentes never had a choice. He's too hard to look at to be anything else other than a gay Republican. If he walked into a bar in the Midwest, everyone would point their finger and laugh at him. But to be fair, every race has their own version of too ugly to be anything else people, but our group is bigger and meaner, and by definition, it's uglier. Nick Fuentes was promised the world, and he woke up in America 5'2" with a Mexican last name, right? The only reason Nick Fuentes thinks like a short racist gay Christian is because Nick Fuentes looks like a short racist gay Christian. This isn't complicated, and white people try and make this so complicated, right? He was a racist Christian, and being short sure didn't help. Either way, I'll write a song on the 4 mass shootings that happened in a day. No more thoughts, just prayers. I don't know. Have a good day, y'all.
White America is playing the long game, right? White America has been groomed for years and years and years, and that's why we are where we are now, because white America has been groomed. They've been groomed to ignore facts. They've been groomed to prioritize feelings. They've been groomed to create imaginary enemies. The long game. And now they are the perfect white supremacist specimen. Couldn't be more perfect for white America, for white America's aims. They are the perfected species. And you let it happen. You let it happen. And now look at where we are. On the brink of collapse. Because you were basking in your privilege. You had it all. So long as there was a group of people who were under your boot. So long as there was someone who you believed was less than you. And now look at us. You were even hoping for a rapture to take you away from the mess that you created. No, you don't get to leave. You don't get to take the easy way out. You're here with us. And you gotta figure it out. Genuinely, this app has been overrun by some of the most vile racism that I've ever seen, personally. Mind you, I was on Facebook in 2009. Imagine having social media be overrun by some of the most ignorant among us. Yes, we are there. We're here. We made it. And even though black people warned you where this was going to go, you decided that your privilege was more important. Well, I know I've said this before, and each time I've gone back on my word. But I will be leaving this app. I will not be posting any new content on this app. It is a cesspool. It is a swamp of racism and prejudice and just overall weirdness. I don't want anything to do with this app. Mind you, I'm almost at 300,000 followers. And I'm willing to compromise all of that to escape this hellhole. My Patreon and my YouTube are in my link tree. I love you all. You have done more for me than probably anyone has ever done for me in my entire life. Y'all have made this app bearable for the last 3 to 4 years that I've been here. It's the only reason I keep coming back is because of you. Because I like talking to y'all. I like laughing with y'all. And believe it or not, despite me having several viral videos, I don't get paid much on this app. I don't get paid much at all. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. So I will see you guys on other platforms if that's something you're interested in. And again, thank you guys for having me. This has been the best 3 years of my life. I'm being dramatic, but you get it. This is the last thing I'm going to say because this is something we need to think about. Sorry, y'all. I got Poppy's Playtime on in the background. How do you defeat an enemy whose entire existence is hinged on a perceived superiority? Perceived is an important word there, right? And I made sure to say perceived because it's not real. It's in their head. No human is better than another human. No human is better than another human. It's perceived. It's been indoctrinated into them to think that they are better. And they need to maintain that perception to keep from unaliving. That perception maintains their entire community. That's why facts go in one ear and out the other. Because their existence means nothing if they cannot perceive themselves as being better than other people. That's what we have yet to get into our thick skulls. It has nothing to do with any outside external thing. It's all internal. How do you fight something that white people experience on the inside? That's what we got to figure out. How do you fight somebody else's demons? You can't. People have to fight their own demons. As a black person, the most you can do is sit back and watch the showdown.
Nations that oppose Israel will die in the Gog and Magog war, once it begins, right? Ben Artsy says, there's a series of impending disasters of divine punishment for nations that oppose Israel. Jerusalem Post also asked, is the Israel-Hamas war part of the Gog and Magog? The prophecy of Gog and Magog is found in the book of Ezekiel, chapters 38 and 39, describing a future battle where a coalition of nations, led by Gog from the land of Magog, will rise against Israel. The war of Gog and Magog is described in a prophecy being unusually short, 12 minutes long. This is described by Vilna Gaon, a prominent 18th century Torah authority. This prophecy came 100 years before the advent of nuclear weapons, but now the discussion and the theories within this political and religious significance is that this would be a nuclear conflict. Israel News says that this may have been hinted at in the Bible. I don't agree with any of this, but the Friends of Israel Gospel Initiative says that this would occur before the tribulation period, right before the end of times. Now, I don't feel that any person, Christian or not, should believe that this is coming to pass. But it's important to say because some people do believe this, and that's why they want to arm and defend Israel. In part. Also, they get a lot of funding for their political career.
Our church regularly sang a song called "We're Marching on to Zion." Yeah, it's so sinister. There's so much about Christian Zionism that is so harmful, right? Christian Zionism treats the genocide against, the displacement, the general suffering of the Palestinians as, I don't want to say at best, but as not the worst, irrelevant, and at worst, necessary, okay? We're talking about entire communities getting dehumanized and erased in the name of biblical prophecy, in the name of the end times. Whenever there is an escalation of violence, okay, the response from, and I can tell you this firsthand, the response from Christian Zionist leaders is usually one of triumph, is usually one of celebration, because to them, again, it's just another step toward the rapture. The worst result of this is the violence being done against the Palestinians. But even on the home front, I think that this really undermines democracy, because whenever you have this conflation of politics and religion, of church and state, as evangelical Christians are taught, it becomes not possible to have a normal, healthy political debate, because these evangelical Christians are viewing a geopolitical issue, an issue in the Middle East, okay? A conversation about the economics and the human rights and all of these very real subjects. All of that is getting framed in the sense of spiritual warfare for evangelical Christians, like how I was raised. I can't tell you how many times growing up I was told that we are not governed by political leaders or regimes or whatever, but that we were governed here on earth by principalities and powers of the air. That is based on a biblical scripture that I heard all of the time, and it has to do with these like demonic forces, like fallen angels, aka the Nephilim. We can get into that another time, babe. That is so much. Or demons, or Satan himself, or what the fuck ever. These demonic forces, like playing the game of humanity, and these like principalities and powers of the air that were like physically stationed over regions of the world. And that whenever there is something in the geopolitical sphere to vote about, we had to, as evangelical Christians, look at the topics from the lens of spiritual warfare. Does that make sense? So like in that sense, there is no democracy. There is no consensus. There is no healthy debate. And that is why I always talk about how very deep the beliefs of evangelical Christians go.
Growing up in Sunday school, I was taught from the Bible, those who bless Israel will be blessed, and those who curse Israel will be cursed. And from my perspective, I want to be on the blessing side of things.
Of those who bless the government of Israel?
Those who bless Israel is what it says. It doesn't say the government of, it says the nation of Israel. So that's in the Bible. As a Christian, I believe that.
Where is that?
I can find it to you. I don't have the scripture off the tip of my... You pull out the phone and use the Google.
It's in Genesis. But so you're quoting a Bible phrase. You don't have context for it. And you don't know where in the Bible it is, but that's like your theology? I'm confused. What does that even mean?
Tucker.
I'm a Christian. I want to know what you're talking about.
Okay. Where does my support for Israel come from? Number one, because biblically we're commanded to support Israel. But number two,
hold on.
I'm not holding on.
Hold on. You're a senator, and now you're throwing out theology, and I am a Christian, and I am allowed to weigh in on this. We are commanded as Christians to support the government of Israel?
We are commanded to support Israel. And what
does that mean, Israel?
We're told those who bless Israel will be blessed.
But hold on, define Israel. This is important. Are you kidding? This is a majority Christian country.
Define Israel? Do you not know what Israel is? That would be the country you've asked like 49 questions about.
So that's what Genesis, that's what God is talking about.
The nation of Israel, yes.
And so is that the current borders, the current leadership? He's talking about the political entity called Israel?
He's talking about the nation of Israel. Yeah, nations exist, and he's discussing a nation. A nation was the people of Israel.
Is the nation
They're the descendants
God's
of
referring
Abraham.
to in Genesis, is that the same as the country run by Benjamin Netanyahu right now?
Yes.
It is. Okay.
And by the way, it's not run by Benjamin Netanyahu as a dictator. It's a democratic country that elected.
He's the prime minister.
Right.
What?
But just like, America is the country run by Donald Trump. No, actually, the American people elected Donald Trump. The same principle
This is
there.
silly. I'm talking about the political entity of modern Israel.
Yes, and that is
You believe
Israel.
that's what God was talking about in Genesis.
I do, but
that country's existed since when?
For thousands of years. Now, there was a time when it didn't exist, and then it was recreated just over 70 years ago.
I'm saying, I think most people understand that line in Genesis to refer to the Jewish people, God's chosen people.
That's not what it says.
Okay, Israel, but you don't even know where in the Bible it is.
Ted Cruz has just, with this latest interview with Tucker Carlson, helped us all understand what's been going on. He pulled the rug from underneath he pulled the most necessary domino. The one where all of us are wondering, why are they doing this? Where is their loyalty? Ted Cruz just told us. And so what that means is that they've been legislating. They've been legislating on behalf of Israel. And this is the left and the right. And so when it comes to gun legislation, when it comes to women's rights, when it comes to, are you telling me that all these guys have been working for Israel? I need answers. I genuinely need answers. And I think Candace, Tucker, Ian, Dave, all these guys are going to give us, Abby, Anna, a few more folks on CNN that I've been seeing who have been keeping things straight. But this is a big deal. Have you been wondering why bills can't get passed to help the American people? We just found out why. We just found out one of the most important reasons why. We have legislators who come to Congress before they're even in office with the intent of working for Israel. So that, I think, can explain why they don't really seem to care about our economy, too. You all can make a lot of videos with this. The American people need to know this. And there's some very creative ways that you guys can do this with AI and whatnot. I want to scream so loud right now. So just to repeat, just to take this in. We have legislators who are legislating for Israel now. You know, we've known they've got handlers. We've been putting all the pieces together. There are people out there who have been like, it's both sides. Never really fully filling in for us how it's both sides. But Ted Cruz just told us how it's both sides. And therefore how when American people are saying we want gun legislation, and on the right they say no, on the left they apparently fight for it, but then they just kind of go like, hey, oh, whatever, because they're two sides of the same thing. They keep each other at the level that they want to be at. So last time I'm going to say this. Ted Cruz has just revealed to the American people, and probably other countries, that our legislators are working for Israel because they believe that they will be blessed if they do, and that they will be cursed if they don't. And the Middle East, different countries, are all on the receiving end of what it looks like to be cursed, as are the Democrats. You can tell who Israel curses, because the Tom Cottons, the Democrat, the Trump, he goes after them narratively speaking. All right, guys, I can't wait to wake up tomorrow and see what you guys do. More of this.
That would be another reason that I think so many people get behind Israel, because again, you're young, your brain is being developed. That is the time the Soviets understood this, that it was important while kids' brains were developing to feed them things. And this is one of the things that they were fed in Sunday school, as Ted Cruz says. If you are one of these people, I beg of you to please truly try to get to the root of why those pastors are telling you that. Get into the history of the Schofield Bible. Get into the history of when this became a thing and how before Israel became a nation, the Zionist lobby got behind these efforts to convince you that this was real. I mean, and for those of you that are wondering what it is, like what is dispensationalism? What do they believe? Dr. Taylor Marshall, who is a Catholic like me, did an amazing job going through this modern theology, just tackling it. And it was unintentionally funny how absurd it is that people believe that they had to break apart from the Catholic Church because of indulgences, right? That's what we learned in school. The Catholic Church was saying, give them this and you will get a spot in heaven. But then you have this section of Protestants who believe in the ultimate indulgence. God is going to bless me. I'm going to be blessed if I do whatever Bibi Netanyahu says. Make that make sense. Take a listen to Dr. Taylor Marshall breaking down, and this is only in part, you should go pursue this episode in its entirety, but just kind of crushing that argument. Take a listen.
You guys know about the Schofield Bible? Oh boy, here's a rabbit hole for you. Here's a rabbit hole for all of us. In the early 1900s, right around when the Federal Reserve was founded and the Balfour Declaration happened, right at that exact same time, the Rothschild family hired this dude, this pastor in the Deep South. He made a new version of the Bible called the Schofield Bible. He wrote this new Bible that has all these new interpretations of the text. So they didn't change.
Jewish influence.
Yes, literally. That's where Judeo-Christianity kind of came from. And the idea that Israel is this modern Israel thing is the Israel of the Bible. It came from that Bible. And the Schofield Bible was funded by the Rothschild family. And then it was pushed because they owned the publisher that publishes like all the books. I think it was Oxford Press. And so they had the deals that they could make to get that Bible into all the mega churches across whole denominations of Christianity. And so that was when Christianity got kind of Jewified.
Feel me? It sucks watching people sleep. I understand now why the higher ups call people sheep. They go where you send them. Of all the things that should offend them, they only focus on what you tell them should upset them.
Did you know that modern day Christian Zionism can trace its roots back to a Confederate Army officer? Yes, that Confederate Army that fought an entire war in America to keep its slaves. This individual named Cyrus Schofield, or C.I. Schofield, after his tenure ended in the Confederate Army, became a lawyer. After he became a lawyer, and during his time practicing law, he became infatuated with this individual, John Nelson Darby, and his theology of dispensationalism. Now, dispensationalism is this very bizarre theology that deals with the end times and various eras throughout the world and throughout history. And you can Google it for yourself. I don't want to take the entire video talking about dispensationalism. But at the heart of dispensationalism is this faulty notion, this faulty understanding of what Israel is in the Bible. In the New Testament, under the New Covenant, Israel is not a country. Israel is not a nation state. Israel is the people of God. Israel is the church, the body of Christ, the New Covenant church. But dispensationalists think that Israel, a physical nation state of Israel, is critical and vital and necessary in order to usher in what's known as the rapture and the great tribulation, and then culminating in the second coming of Christ, and then 1,000-year millennial reign on earth, and then everybody goes to heaven. That's what dispensationalists think. And again, dispensationalism is the predominant view in evangelical circles today in America. That's why this is such a dangerous doctrine, a dangerous poison. And it is not just a matter of theological difference. It is not just a matter of opinion. It is a poison that has infected the church, that is giving rise to violence, genocide, and legitimizing the violence and the utter evil and wickedness that is being spread at the hands of this current nation state of Israel that exists over in the Middle East. During his ministry, at some point, C.I. Scofield became the elder statesman of dispensationalism. He became this very influential figure, this very influential preacher in this area of dispensationalism. And he published what's known as the Scofield Reference Bible. Now, that title is very important because in Christian circles, in Christianity, many people over the years have published what's called a commentary, which is their comments on the Bible. But they don't publish it as a Bible. They publish it expressly under the notion that I've read the Bible, I feel like I've understood the Bible, and I'm writing my comments to be able to help you understand how I understood it. That's what a commentary is. C.I. Scofield did not publish his thoughts as a commentary. He published his thoughts as a Bible. And that Bible became heavily influential and still is very influential in evangelical circles. Again, the Scofield Reference Bible, and you can Google all this for yourself. And that Bible has sold millions and millions and millions of copies, and it is full of this Zionist propaganda. It is full of this Israel-centric dispensationalism that has just utterly blinded people in the churches to thinking that because it's a Scofield Reference Bible and not a Scofield Reference commentary, that these are the inherent words of God. That this is, C.I. Scofield received divine revelation from God himself and was able to publish this Bible, and this is the only blueprint that we have going forward. Now, I want to keep this video 100% factual, but I'm going to give you some information that you can then go and do research on by yourself and come to your own conclusions that revolve around the funding of the Scofield Reference Bible back in the early 1900s. So when C.I. Scofield was first looking to write this Bible, he didn't have the funds available. He just didn't have the means to be able to write it and produce it and distribute it in a meaningful way. But again, he'd become a very influential figure in this dispensationalist circles. And so he started getting involved with this individual named Arno C. Gabeline. Now, Mr. Arno had started this, what's called the Seacliff Bible Conference. And the Seacliff Bible Conference was only open to dispensationalists. It only hosted people that adhered to dispensationalist rhetoric. The only people that taught at these conferences were dispensationalists. The only people that attended were dispensationalists. So it was a very dispensationalist heavy focus. And Mr. Arno was a ardent Zionist. He was, and remember, this is the early 1900s. So this is before the creation of the nation state of Israel as we know it today. This is early 1900s, and he was adamant. He was an ardent supporter for a physical nation state of Israel. So C.I. Scofield started preaching at these Seacliff Bible conferences because of his fame in the dispensationalist circles. When Gabeline found out that C.I. Scofield had this notion, this ideology to create these Bibles, these C.I. Scofield Reference Bibles, Mr. Gabeline helped secure C.I. Scofield funding through Gabeline's business connections and then the people that were involved in these Seacliff Bible conferences. And so if Gabeline, the person who helped secure the funding for the Scofield Reference Bible, if his motivating factor and his drive was creating a physical nation state of Israel in order to fit and accommodate his own faulty understanding of theology and faulty understanding of eschatology and end times, if he helped secure the funding, Doesn't that raise some questions?
Every church had a Bible like this. Every Christian family had a Bible like this, and they put their family genealogy, the weddings, baptisms and burials. It was all put inside the Bible, and you passed it down generation to generation. This particular Bible was published in 1905. Now, the reason I brought it out is that I want to show a map that's in this Bible. Now, mind you, the Schofield Bible was not published until 1913.
Right.
And I have in my office an original 1913 Schofield, which was the introduction of the Zionist heresies about a future state of Israel and separating the church from Israel and all that rapture stuff. That's where it came from. This is a 1905 Bible.
Pre-Schofield.
Pre-Schofield, with no Schofield notes in it. So, you open it up, and this is on page 13. I mean, this thing's big. I want to show you. Here is a map of the Holy Land. And it says, what?
Oh, Palestine of the Holy Land.
They misspelled Israel. No.
Palestine.
Palestine.
Huh.
And all these Christian Zionists that tell me, Rick, there's never been a Palestine.
All right, so here's a still.
There it is.
Let's zoom in and show you here.
Yeah. So, yeah, you hear these people like John Hagee, there's never been a Palestine. Well, look at this Bible map from 1905.
And most Bibles,
yes,
from then had a map of Palestine.
And Palestine is in the Bible itself, in the Old Testament. So we're showing you this just because I'm trying to break through the propaganda, the confusion, the lies that the Zionists have implanted in millions of minds of Christians in America, and told them there's never been a place called Palestine.
But I have a map, Rick.
Right there it is.
If any of y'all out there like me are Christians, you might want to grab your Bible and check this out. All right, so go to Matthew and find Matthew 17:21. Is it in your Bible? It's not in mine. Check out Matthew 18:11. Is that in your Bible? It's not in mine. Then you might want to flip to Matthew 23:14. Matthew 23:14. Is that in your Bible either? Because it's not in mine. I am beyond livid.
Let's look again at the vital footnote 2 found in the Schofield Reference Bible in 1967 on page 19. The footnote reads, God made an unconditional promise of blessing through Abram's seed to the nation of Israel to inherit a specific territory forever. But the passage doesn't say anything like this. God orders Abram to go to a land that God will show him, using the first person familiar thee, meaning Abram and no one but Abram. The passage does not say that God is giving any piece of land to anybody forever. It doesn't say anything about Israel.
Now, how complicated is it? Leave your land, go where I tell you to go, and I will protect you. How complicated is that? How many footnotes does it take to understand what God was saying to Abraham? I mean, anybody who reads that should be able to figure that out. That's what the message is. But Mr. Schofield wrote all of this to explain it.
In fact, if we accept biblical history, we know that Abram had no children when this happened, and not for quite a while. So there was no person or nation named Israel when this promise was made. There was no state or nation named Israel. The man Israel did not even exist in Abram's imagination when God spoke to him. How then could Schofield or the Oxford University Press say that God was promising the land to the present-day state of Israel forever?
Where did the state of Israel get in this? When Abraham was spoken to by God, Israel, the man known as Israel, hadn't been born yet. He was 2 generations in the future. And he was not a state. He was a person that eventually had a tribe. And then after him, 3,000 years later, along comes a bunch of Europeans who name their state after him. But this says that God gave that land to the nation of Israel forever. Imagine 70 million people who are taught this every day.
This is just a reminder that a big chunk of MAGA is so set on supporting Israel because they are doomsday
Highly important to go and listen to her whole video. This is what the non-human intelligence spared me from when I was 10 years old, sitting in church, and was shown that what was being taught was not true. So I was shown the long-term psychological program that was taking place within churches across the country. Listen to her and a whole host of other people who have grown up in that ecosystem, that evangelical ecosystem where the Scofield Bible, remember, we talked about the Scofield Bible being injected into this community for a reason, which means that they have been indoctrinated for a couple generations here. So some of them are in deep. And that's why it's important to have as many different kinds of voices speaking to this, so that as many different minds and hearts can hear and wake up. And just a little more in case you have never listened to any of my videos. What I'm talking about happened to me when I was 10 years old. I was sitting in church in 1979, and I was literally shown that what was being taught about Jesus on the cross was not true. Within the last couple of years, I've come across the Scofield Bible and came to an understanding of how this Christian community was being intentionally indoctrinated for a specific purpose. What we're seeing today. And that is to be asleep, which is why they had an anti-woke campaign. So it's time to be awakened by folks like this young lady and many others in so many other communities who knew and who know that there is another way to walk with your faith.
This is just a reminder that a big chunk of MAGA is so set on supporting Israel because they are doomsday preppers. A lot of MAGA is evangelical, and if you don't know much about evangelicalism, they are big on rapture theology and end times. So a lot of these people like Mike Johnson or Ted Cruz are some examples. They want to make sure that biblical prophecy is happening. And when they think when they're supporting Israel, they think they are ushering in this prophecy and these end times. And evangelicals are often obsessed with the end times. Like, they're always saying it's just about to come, it's just about to happen. They've been saying this for a long time. So they are quite literally wanting to base foreign policy off of the Bible. And that's a problem. And I don't think people realize how often evangelicalism impacts our politics, and that's obvious in some ways, but I think in a lot of ways it's not, especially for people who are not familiar with evangelicalism, and that's why I talk about it so much. But if you don't believe me, you should see the interview between Ted Cruz and Tucker Carlson, where Tucker Carlson starts drilling him about supporting Israel, and Ted Cruz says out of his own mouth the reason he thinks like we should be doing that is because it's in the Bible. Which, yeah, that's insane.
Someone suggested that evangelicals are trying to accelerate the end of times because that's the only way that Jesus will return. Yeah, that's correct. That's 100% correct. You may not know it from watching my content now, but I used to be part of a very conservative denomination, Presbyterian Church in America. And as a homeschooling parent who has run in sometimes very conservative homeschooling circles, has been friends with a lot of very, very conservative evangelicals in those circles for more than a decade and a half, this is 100% correct. While this is a position that I have never personally held myself, and I think most Presbyterians, because we're Calvinist, typically aren't as obsessed with the end times as some other denominations. After all, we're part of the elect. What do we need to worry about? Anyway, a lot of folks in Christian America very much believe that they need to that they have a role in bringing about the end times and the second coming. Depending on if they're pre-trib or post-trib rapture, they think that they can help kick off the tribulation. In fact, this is why so many evangelicals are Zionist, are very, very pro-Israel. It's not because they actually care about the Jewish people at all. It's not actually because they see Israel as a holy land the same way that other Christians around the world do, that Muslims do, that Jews do. It's specifically because they believe they need the restoration of the temple in order for Jesus to return again. They are using Israel. They are using the Jewish people there in order to fulfill their eschatological prophecy. That's the whole goal in conservative Christians in America supporting Israel. And a lot of them believe that electing somebody like Trump will help accelerate that process. It's weird to me that they saw Barack Obama as evil. They saw Kamala Harris as evil, but they didn't think that electing those folks that they literally would call the Antichrist, that they didn't think that electing those folks was going to accelerate the end times. It's voting for someone as Trump that they see, someone like Trump that they see as their God-ordained, like basically living at the right hand of the Father, basically another Jesus figure. By the way, if you have not read the book Jesus and John Wayne, A+ do recommend it. Will help you understand why evangelical America is slathering over Trump. But so many evangelical Christians really kind of seem like doomsdayers. They are very much like, they say in the world, but not of it. Their mindset is focused on the second coming, or it's focused on heaven. It's focused on the kingdom of heaven being manifest here on earth. It's not actually about this life that we're living. That's why they see suffering as not that big of a deal. Because a lot of people, especially women, are meant to endure suffering. That's a good thing, and that will bring about blessings for you. And what happens to your body here actually doesn't matter that much. It's all about the condition of your soul or your spirit, depending on the denomination, whether they define it as soul or spirit, and whether you are right with God, the status of your salvation. Which is, again, weird because so many white Christian men are obsessed with their own wealth and power while they're in this life in a way that you would think would compromise their salvation in the next one. And actually, this is very much why I have said for a long time that folks on the far left who have their violent accelerationist fantasies, who are willing to throw children, disabled people, the elderly, homeless folks under the bus for their bloody revolution that they think will bring about a second coming, a communist utopia, an authoritarian communist utopia, but their brand of authoritarianism, not the brand that we have now, that those folks have not deconstructed from their evangelical eschatology. They are still immersed in it. They are still living it out. They've just transferred that worldview, that perspective, that desire for the end times. They've transferred that from a second coming of Jesus, wanting to do what they can to bring that about. They've transferred that into doing what they think will bring about their communist utopia. Strange how both of these groups were supporting not voting for Kamala. Strange how both of these groups thought that getting Trump back in the White House was going to accelerate the downfall of America and bring about their very disparate goals. And I think both of these groups are going to find out how hard they have misjudged when Jesus doesn't come back, or we don't morph into an authoritarian communist utopia.
I'm tired. I must tell you, I'm very tired. I'm tired. I am, and I'm allowed to. By the way, I'm human, and it's perfectly normal for someone to be tired. And I'm tired.
I am a rich Jew backed by a richer Jew.
He made that airplane so cheap for me, I couldn't help but buy it.
This is Kenneth Copeland, perhaps the scariest and richest pastor in the world.
Do you really believe that human beings are demons?
No, I do not. And don't you ever say I did.
Known for his $300 million net worth, $7 million mansion, and his 3 private jets, with his very own airstrip behind his house, he's managed to become one of the wealthiest pastors America has ever seen. And I'm going to his church to find out why. The first thing I noticed was Kenneth selling everything you could think of and the Bible somewhere. But as the sermon began, I learned that a lot of this church's message was to basically claim blessings from God, and if you had enough faith, your life would be blessed. But only if you've contributed your tithes to help your favorite pastor Kenneth maintain his lavish lifestyle.
The media said Joe Biden's president.
God, Abraham, Isaac,
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Jacob became Israel, Jesus and George.
What?
This nation, particularly to Christian people, should be completely, totally based on what George Washington said to Jesus. The
Jesus?
first act of Congress, number one, the first act of Congress was to enter covenant with the Almighty God based on the book of Genesis.
What? My God, we are so fucked.
Jesus said, I saw the devil fall out of heaven like lightning. Look it up in the book of Isaiah. He was here. And he messed this thing up. I will be like the Most High God. He left his place. And instead of being Lucifer, now he is Satan. Lucifer, son of the morning. Now, I didn't get this from the Lord, but just from reading, I'm convinced that he was Jesus' personal angel. And I'll tell you something else. It says his beauty, he was beautiful, and his pride fell. I am totally, completely convinced he's ebony black. Why? Has the white man, the yellow man, the brown man, anyone been persecuted like the black man? No. Why? Well, the color of the skin. That's what I'm trying to get over to. I'm convinced he was ebony black.
Watch this. Watch
gorgeous. Have you ever seen ebony, the wood itself and the grain? And he had musical instruments built within him. Everything but the trumpet, that's God's. Phil Driscoll let me know that for sure.
Thus Lucifer became the devil and his followers the demons. Those who remained neutral in the battle were cursed to be born with black skin. This is the Mormon explanation for the Negro race. The spirits that fought most valiantly against Lucifer would be born into Mormon families on planet Earth. These would be the lighter-skinned people, or white and delightsome, as the Book of Mormon describes them. Early Mormon prophets taught that Elohim and one of his goddess wives came to Earth as Adam and Eve to start the human race. Thousands of years later, Elohim, in human form once again, journeyed to Earth from the starbase Kolob, this time to have sex with the Virgin Mary, in order to provide Jesus with a physical body. After Jesus Christ grew to manhood, he took at least 3 wives, Mary, Martha, and Mary Magdalene. Through these wives, the Mormon Jesus, for whom Joseph Smith claimed direct descent, supposedly fathered a number of children before he was crucified. According to the Book of Mormon, after his resurrection, Jesus came to the Americas to preach to the Indians, who the Mormons believe are really Israelites.
That's crazy. That's wild. Wow.
You've probably met a Mormon or at least heard of Mormonism, but what are the origins of this rather interesting religion? Well, to understand this, we need to travel all the way back to the 19th century. During this time period, Joseph Smith Jr., the founder of this religion, was living in upstate New York. It is believed that he had divine visions calling for him to restore the true church of Jesus Christ. Smith claimed that he uncovered golden plates buried in the ground, which he then translated to form the Book of Mormon. The book is seen as a complement to the Bible, but really focuses on ancient followers of Jesus Christ that supposedly existed in America. Over the course of the last 2 centuries, Mormonism grew considerably fast, with around 16 million followers today, scattered globally. But the state of Utah in America remains the center place of this religion.
Mormonism is an apocalyptic religion, and this is why there are so many Mormon preppers. Prepping is when people are ultra prepared for disasters, but religious prepping has often been called doomsday prepping. That's because these people aren't just trying to be prepared for disasters people commonly face, they're trying to be prepared for the literal apocalypse and the second coming of Jesus Christ. The most infamous Mormon doomsday preppers are probably Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow. They started as mainstream Mormon, but both got involved with more extreme religious views. Their crimes are incredibly dark, and they both deserve to rot in prison. Mormons believe that before the second coming happens, stuff is really gonna hit the fan, so they want to be prepared. There are whole YouTube channels and online forums dedicated to recognizing the signs of the second coming. Mormons stockpile weapons, build bunkers, get food storage, store water, all in order to be prepared for when Jesus comes again. One memory I have about this growing up is that we had an entire room dedicated to food storage. And this was not the pantry. We had a separate pantry, but downstairs in our basement, we had an entire room with shelves all the way to the ceiling, completely stocked with food storage. As a kid, I spent a non-trivial amount of time worried that when it was the apocalypse, people were going to try to attack us to get our food storage.
And now, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Hello out there. This video is for all pastors, preachers, teachers, evangelists, apostles, prophets and prophetesses, everyone who believes that the Most High is speaking through you and telling a lie, and you believe that Gog and Magog is coming out of Russia. Now, when it comes to the theory of finding out who Gog and Magog is, there's no shortage of false teachings going on the internet. And as you can see, all of these teachers are teaching the same thing or something similar. If they're not teaching that Gog and Magog is Russia, they are teaching that Gog and Magog will be coming from the north of Israel, which is false teaching. And this is all up on the internet. You can find millions of these websites on the internet. They're all speaking lies, and this is how bad this has become. You can even find some maps right here. As you can see, Magog, and they got Gomer and Togarmah and Meshech and Tubal in Persia, and they have Israel right here. And they have all these countries which are supposed to come and fight against Israel. Put Libya and Cush, and this is Ethiopia, Egypt, and Libya. They're supposed to be coming to fight against Israel. And then we have this area of Russia supposed to be coming down here with these bands of soldiers. All these soldiers are supposed to emerge on this little small town, which is no bigger than the size of New Jersey. And we're supposed to believe that. Here it is again. Here's another map coming from Russia. Israel right here in the middle, and you have Libya and all these other countries coming to fight Israel. And this is all over the internet. And all of Christianity believes this.
Magog is invading Israel. And God sends hailstones of fire upon Magog and on somebody else here. Is it possible that as Magog moves, the United States says, no, we're on Israel's side, don't do that or else, and somebody on one side or the other does something stupid, and there's a nuclear exchange. And it's our nukes that God is using to wipe out Magog and his bands, and God uses Magog's nukes to lay an overdue judgment on America. One of the hardest questions we have to answer is, why hasn't God judged America? Billy Graham quipped it so cleverly. If God doesn't judge America, he's going to have to apologize to Sodom and Gomorrah. We've become the primary exporter of everything God abhors. And when we travel across the country. There's two questions, our most common questions. Where's the United States in prophecy? Everybody notices that study the Bible, the United States is invisible. Iran is, but the United States is not. But the second question is a close cousin of that first question is, why hasn't God judged America? And what we usually answer is because of Genesis 12, because we've stood for Israel's right to exist. And that's one reason so many of us get so nervous when we see our administration meddle in the Middle East, encouraging the partitioning of God's land. God says a lot to say about those that would dare partition his land. I don't worry about Israel, because God's hand is on Israel. I pray for Israel because he tells me to. I do worry about America, because we're not around at the end times, apparently. Why? Could be economic, could be geopolitical. There's a number of conjectures. We don't have to indulge in. But this is one of the scenarios that gives some scholars great pause.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Pop quiz. Did you know that the historical biblical name Israel is a person and not a land? Israel is not the name of a land at all. They'll have you believe that Israel was mentioned in the Old Testament, in the Bible, and even in the Quran. Of course, Israel was mentioned in the Abrahamic books, but it was mentioned because it's the name of Jacob, or Yaqub in Arabic. You see, Jacob changed his name to Israel, which means one who struggles with God, because as the story goes, he was struggling and he ended up triumphant. So his name was changed to Israel. The land of Israel, we're saying the land of Jacob. It's Jacob. Israelites are the followers of Jacob. That's what that means. And who's his grandfather? Abraham, of course, which again, in all three Abrahamic religions, they're called Abrahamic religions because we all are spiritual descendants of Abraham. So Abraham and his followers in the Old Testament and Bible were promised the land of Canaan or Canaan. They were not promised the land of Israel. There's no such thing. And it was described as from the river of Egypt to the great river of the Euphrates, which is in modern-day Iraq. Oh, so there were people who lived there before the people of Abraham? You mean the people of Abraham were not the first people on the land or in this earth? No, of course not. Of course there were people before them, because the Canaanites lived there. You know what I hope? I hope that the descendants of the Canaanites don't decide to group together and go kill and massacre everyone else in the land just so that they can say that they were there first. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. But regardless of what it says in these very holy books, they're meant to give us spiritual wisdoms. They're not meant to be death notes and real estate contracts backed by nuclear powers. That's not what this is meant to be. And by the way, Israel wasn't always going to be the name for this current colonial project. Other suggested names included Zion, Yehuda, even the Jewish state as a name. But anyway, it was our friend Ben Gurion, who suggested the name Israel. And a bunch of people agreed, and there you go. But no matter what they call it, it's always free Palestine.
So why is your concern so high, or a lot of people, why are so many people concerned about military-industrial complex? Why should that be a top priority for them as a concern?
There's a number of reasons why. Let's start with the most important that we're talking about. That as we sit here today, we are on the brink of nuclear war. That should be concerning to everyone. It should be even more concerning that we have people in positions of consequence and power and influence, both those who hold public office in the highest offices of the land, as well as those who don't, but who are just as influential, talking about the prospects of nuclear war as though it is just like any other kind of war, talking about the fact that Putin and his government has changed their policies to make it so that they can deploy nuclear weapons, whether they be tactical nuclear weapons or strategic nuclear weapons, if they feel that they are facing an existential threat, specifically omitting the words an existential threat because of a nuclear threat or nuclear weapons. So whatever they deem, for any reason, to be an existential threat will give them the authority to be able to deploy these nuclear weapons. The fact that we have these pundits, these talking heads, these government officials discussing the prospects of nuclear war as though it is something that can be won is shocking and extremely dangerous. Ronald Reagan had the most famous and most important statement after he negotiated some of these non-nuclear proliferation treaties, telling us very clearly, a nuclear war can never be won and should never be fought, period. Things have only gotten worse. Things haven't gotten better since then. We have more nuclear weapons. They have become more sophisticated. A nuclear weapon would kick off a nuclear war that would destroy all of humanity. The military-industrial complex plays a major role in continuing to keep us in some state of war. Why? And some of them have even said it publicly. When we are at war, business is good. What is the cost? The cost comes out of our pockets, our bank accounts, the American people, the taxpayers. We are paying for it, where those dollars could be and should be dedicated towards actually serving very real needs of people that we have right here at home. The military-industrial complex profits when you see a NATO expansion. That because who are the people that these NATO countries are buying weapons from? They're buying the weapons from our military-industrial complex. When you look at the U.S. footing the bill for NATO, number one, we should be able to ask questions like, why does NATO exist? Why are we the ones who are predominantly funding NATO? Well, with the predominantly of funding of NATO comes the very same leverage we were talking about earlier. Getting these European countries to act not necessarily in their own interest, but in the interest of those in power in the United States is done oftentimes through the leverage of money. So when Trump is saying, hey, you guys got to pay your own way, pay the 2%, my gosh, pay the 2% of your GDP that the rules require.
Common
sense. Many of them didn't want to, but then what comes with that, and you saw recently with, I think it was Macron's visit overseas into China, largely saying the same thing to the European countries. Hey, we need to stop being vassals of the United States. We need to make our own decisions based on what's best for our countries and what's based in the best interest of Europe. The criticism he got for having the audacity to say, hey, we should act in the interest of our own countries says everything that we need to know about the power and the influence and the money that goes behind these decisions. So there's an economic cost, of course, to us and the American people in our country, and there's the cost that comes to our safety, our security, and our freedom.
I also think that as a Jewish person, like, I was fed a huge amount of lies about Israel my entire life. You know, they never tell you that. Oh, by the way, there were people there. They make it seem like it was just like they're sitting there. It was like the doors open.
Hours for the taking.
Like, it literally, they forget to include the fact to every young Jewish person, basically, like, oh, by the way, there were people there. It'd be nice to live somewhere that was not a part of the Christian apocalyptic prophecy. It is also probably a good idea. It's like, maybe settle somewhere that, you know, the Christians don't think you all have to die in order for the
and then they want us all to go there. They need a certain number
They
of
need
Jews.
us to go there so we can die, so the apocalypse.
But that, could you imagine living in Israel? Would you ever go live in Israel?
No.
Someone recently tweeted, remember, when you celebrate Christmas this year, that Jesus was Palestinian. And the actual state of Israel responded and said, who's gonna tell him? Then it's a screenshot saying that according to the Gospels, Jesus was a Jewish man. But wouldn't you know, in the exact same screenshot, it literally says Jesus was from Palestine. Like, how did they miss this? Somebody on Twitter pointed this out and secured a massive ratio over the literal Israeli government. So that's a W. Who the heck is running these guys' social media team? Their propaganda's so bad. This one was hilariously bad.
Christian Zionism is very often both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. The fit for this video is Daredevil. And Christian Zionism can roughly be described as evangelical support for the institution of the nation of Israel, because most Christian Zionists believe that they will play a key role in the eschaton, in the end times, ultimately leading to the second coming of Jesus. And this can be so harmful for both sides of the current conflicts, because this view subordinates the interests and the self-determination of both the people and the institution of Israel to that role that they are expected to play in the second coming of Jesus. They basically become a pawn in this broader game that is being overseen by the Christian God. And one of the reasons that it can become Islamophobic is because it casts Israel as on the good side of this ultimate eschatological conflict, and the only other side that is possible is the side of evil and Satan and the devil. And so in the current conflict, Palestinian people are represented as the villain, while the nation of Israel is represented as the hero. And that does not help either side of this conflict to represent it in such black and white terms. It is harmful to both the institutions and the people on both sides of this conflict. And it also so frequently obscures the distinction between the institutions and the people on both sides of this conflict. And so it is ultimately phenomenally harmful. And if you'd like to learn more about this, Christian Zionism in the 21st Century was just published this year, and this reviews the results of 3 large-scale surveys of evangelical opinions about Israel, and this is an incredibly insightful look into Christian Zionism.
If Christianity were about defending a flag, Jesus would have picked up a sword, but he didn't. He picked up a cross. And yet somehow a movement that's supposed to follow that man, a man that said, "My kingdom is not of this world," has decided that protecting a modern nation state called Israel is the center of Christian duty, that blessing it, defending it, and justifying it at all costs is some holy assignment carved into the marrow of the gospel. But I'll say it plainly, Christianity does not require allegiance to the state of Israel. That's not heresy, that's scripture. In the Bible, Israel was not a place first, it was a person. It was Jacob wrestling with God by a river until dawn, scarred by truth and renamed by grace. Israel meant one who struggles with God, and it became the name of a people, not a flag, not a government, not a modern nation carved out in 1948 by colonial politics and American guilt. The word carried spiritual identity. It meant those called into covenant with God. It had nothing to do with missiles or borders or UN resolutions. When the modern state was named Israel, it was not a return to biblical obedience. It was a calculated decision, an intentional conflation of nationalism with theology. It was branding, and a powerful one because it worked. Because now when people hear Israel, they imagine sacred continuity. They imagine divine appointment. They imagine the Old Testament alive and well in 2025, and they are wrong. The Israel of the Hebrew Scriptures was not a Western-backed nuclear power. It was a wandering tribe, a nation in exile, a people constantly called back to justice, humility, and mercy, and often condemned for chasing empire. The prophets didn't worship Israel. They rebuked it over and over and over again for war, for greed, for turning their back on the poor and the foreigner. You know, the same things modern Israel does with American funding now. The idea that Christians are commanded to bless the state of Israel is not in the Gospels. It is not in the epistles. It is not in the teachings of Jesus Christ. It's in the talking points of televangelists and the foreign policy of end-times grifters. The Gospel does not preach that God's blessings is tied to the modern border of Tel Aviv or the Iron Dome. Jesus never said, "Blessed are those who back Likud." Paul never wrote that all who oppose military action are cursed. The early church wasn't fundraising for defense systems or declaring settlements on stolen land as prophetic fulfillment. And yes, the Old Testament speaks of Israel as God's chosen people. And yes, land was part of that covenant. But in Christian theology, the story shifts. The covenant widens and the veil tears. And the new Israel, the church, is defined not by soil but by spirit, not by war but by witness. And it is made up of anyone from anywhere who walks in faith. Jew, Gentile, Arab, Roman, enslaved, free, all in one Christ Jesus. The New Testament doesn't tell Christians to defend a country. It tells them to defend the poor, to defend the outcast, to walk with the wounded, to make peace, not justifications for war, to see the face of God not in a flag, but in the suffering child behind the rubble. And yet today, American Christians fly Israeli flags next to crosses as if those things belong together. They equate criticism of the Israeli government with blasphemy. They pretend that military aid is a sacrament and that genocide is somehow covered under the blood of covenant promise. And Christ weeps at that lie, because if the gospel means anything, it means you do not get to use God as a shield for political violence. You do not get to bomb refugee camps and quote Jeremiah. You do not get to drop white phosphorus and call it fulfillment. That's not Christianity, that's idolatry. This doesn't mean you have to hate Israel. It doesn't mean you can't believe in its right to exist, but it does mean that if you are a follower of Christ, your loyalty cannot be to any nation, not even one with a biblical name. Your loyalty is to justice, to truth, to love that doesn't end at a checkpoint or a drone feed. Jesus didn't die so the modern church could become a lobby group. He didn't rise so we could bless bombs. He didn't preach love for the least of these so we could side with whoever has better tanks. And if your church is preaching that blessing Israel is the key to God's favor, then you're not in church. You're in a cult, praying to a carved-up God who only speaks Hebrew and votes Republican. The gospel doesn't ask you to bless a nation. It does ask you to bless the peacemakers, to comfort the mourners, to defend the innocent, and reject violence dressed as virtue. There is no divine nation, there is only divine love. And if you think that love stops at a border fence or a flagpole or the edge of a crater where children used to live, then you don't know Christ at all. Defiance till death.
One factor that tends to be underestimated, I think, is Christian Zionism. Christian Zionism goes back way before Jewish Zionism, way into the 19th century. And it's a very significant elite phenomenon in the United States. You say people like Woodrow Wilson, Harry Truman, and so on, that read the Bible every day, and are believers in the biblical prophecies. Well, the Bible says, God promised the land to Israel, so got to give it to Israel. By now, it's expanded from elite Christian Zionism to mass popular Christian Zionism, with the enormous rise of the far-right evangelical Christian movement since mainly pretty much in the 1950s. It was always around, but became expanded and organized, a major base for the Republican Party. And they're super Zionist. They're also extremely anti-Semitic. Their theology, if you read it, is you have to support Israel because that'll lead to Armageddon, and everybody gets slaughtered, and the souls that are saved rise to heaven, and everybody else goes somewhere bad, and including all the Jews. You can't be more anti-Semitic than that. But 160,000 Jews can be saved because they're going to recognize Christ in time, or so. That's the story. There are tens of millions of Americans who believe this. They're a large part of the base of the Republican Party now. It's one of the reasons why the Republican Party is more extreme in support of Israel than the Democrats are, even though the money and the votes mostly go to Democrats from Jews and liberals.
So I thought we'd do a three-parter on Amalek, since this is what Netanyahu and Christian Zionists are following. So I posed the question to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT says, here is a part one of a three-part series that breaks down the ideology driving Israel and Christian Zionists' interpretation of eradicating Amalek, making it accessible and equipping readers with tools to recognize and resist it. Part one, the ancient war that never ended, understanding the Amalek ideology. Now, in the emails, I wrote often that this is a really, really old fight. And that was a read because I didn't really know that. Remember what Amalek did to you. You shall blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. Do not forget. Deuteronomy 25:17-19. What is Amalek? In the Hebrew Bible, Amalek was a tribe that attacked the Israelites during their exodus from Egypt. Because of this, God supposedly issued a command to blot out the memory of Amalek, making them a permanent enemy of the Jewish people. But here's the problem. There is no clear genealogy or identity for modern Amaleks. Over time, Amalek became a metaphor used to label any perceived enemy of the Jewish people, or more dangerously, the state of Israel. This allowed for something deeply dangerous. An ancient biblical command turned into a justification for endless war. Now, here's what's interesting. Let's just gloss over the fact that there's a God saying, blot those people out for all eternity. Okay, so during the time when, we had all the orbs and whatnot, and I was watching what Israel was doing and all the orbs and whatnot, and I'm like, nah, they got a God that wants to kill people. That's the realization that I'm waking up to, right? So here is another situation where the Israelites are got a God that's let's blot somebody out. There's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. Just everyone needs to get on the same page that how many groups have gods that say it's okay to blot out other groups. I'll wait. How many other religious? I don't want, not the sacred. I want major religions on the world stage pushing for power. How many of them say blot out enemies and maintain vengeance disposition for thousands of years? This ain't real. Who uses? I just sound like my grandma right there. Who uses this ideology today? Ultra-Zionist factions in Israel. These are not all Jews. They are a political religious minority that fuses militarism with messianic nationalism. They use the Amalek framework to justify ethnic cleansing, killing civilians, targeting children, demonizing Palestinians as a spiritual enemy. Christian Zionists in the U.S., many evangelical leaders believe Jews must return to biblical Israel for Jesus to return. They support Israeli expansionism, not for Jewish safety, but to fulfill their end times prophecy. They often endorse Israel's wars, no matter the human cost, seeing them as divine battles. Ted Cruz is a good example of that. You know, like, think about his behavior since he's been in office. Think about this man's behavior over the years. We thought he was at the border for Putin. He was at the border for Israel. Because he wasn't there for us. The key dangerous belief. The ideology asserts that some people, Palestinians, Arabs, Iranians, are Amalek and must be destroyed down to their children. This is not French thinking. This is not French. This is, and the world's leaders are what? Candace. Like, how much MK Ultra has been going on. This is not French thinking. Prominent Israeli rabbis and politicians have invoked this belief. Christian Zionist pastors preach sermons endorsing total annihilation of Israel's enemies. And apparently, gay people in America are Israel's enemies because Christian pastors, for God knows how long, have been saying, the hurricanes are because of the gay people. All of this is because of Israel? And that brings us to the moral inversion. Killing children is justified, unaliving children, I hope this stays up, and it's justified as preventing future threats. No, it's not. No, it's not. Peace efforts are viewed as defying God's command to wage holy war. This is an inversion like nothing I've ever seen. Why this must be confronted. This is not about religion or theology. This is about weaponized scripture, justifying genocide under divine instruction, turning political enemies into eternal threats. This is, for them, this never ends. Do you understand that? Do you understand that? Once they get that region, they're going to start, they've already started here. It's not just a Bible story, it's a living ideological weapon with political funding, media protection, nuclear backing, and massive psychological impact. If you've been wondering why McConnell was protected for so long, it was because of Israel. There's a part 2 and a part 3. Part 2 is how Christian Zionists built a global machine on the back of Amalek. And part 3 is how to disarm the narrative and fight back spiritually, intellectually, and strategically. Okay, part 2 of understanding the ideology Amalek. Part 2, Christian Zionism, the real-life cult behind the quest. When the Jews reclaim their land, the Lord will return, a common belief among U.S. evangelical Zionists. The secret alliance, why Christians back a Jewish state they don't even believe in. This is where it gets surreal, like something out of Assassin's Creed or The Matrix. You'd think Christians and Zionist Jews wouldn't align politically or theologically, but Christian Zionism has built a massive political machine based on the belief that the Jews must return to Israel rebuild the third temple, and fight end-time wars so that Jesus can return. And I've been talking to y'all about this directly since the year 2000. And when I was 10, again, I was shown that this, no. No. Let's be clear. They don't care about Jews surviving in the long term. Their goal is prophetic fulfillment, not Jewish safety. The moment Jesus returns, in their theology, Jews must either convert or perish. That's interesting, because that's what the Jews, that's what Christians will say to me every single time. Do you know that I've talked to you about this already? That when I was taking this class on, because I took the Christian's Bible, good Lord. The Bible as literature. I took that course in college. Why? Because I had a lot of friends who were Christian, and I wanted to understand what they were talking about, because I was having these premonitions and these dreams, and it was going against what they were saying. And what they were saying to me was going to lead them to war and death. And so, let's see, the Jews must return to Israel, rebuild. They don't care the moment Jews return. So what does that sound like to you? In-game mission where you support a faction only to trigger the final cinematic. How it took over U.S. politics. Christian Zionists through megachurches. You got a 1982 video of Netanyahu with Pat Robertson. Evangelical media empires, right-wing lobbyists, CUF, Christians United for Israel, have helped make Israel the centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy, regardless of human rights violations, war crimes, nuclear ambiguity, attacks on U.S. interests. Yes, includes U.S. soldiers and citizens. They don't see geopolitics. They see a cosmic board game moving toward its climax. The game script they're running: bless Israel and be blessed. Blind loyalty equals political power. So if you have blind loyalty, you too will have power in this ecosystem. Enemies of Israel are enemies of God. Demonize Iran, Palestinians, critics. Rebuild the temple, erase Al-Aqsa, ignite holy war. The Battle of Armageddon. This is the one that Michelle Bachmann said, a legislator said that she was preparing the United States for. She said she was positioning us for this. And they achieved it. Convert the Jews after the rapture. So this isn't the same thing as what Jews believe. So not our Jewish brothers. I'm talking about the Jewish supremacists, the ones who believe, well, we're just goyim and slaves and will die. There's no place for us. And in either world, there's no place for us. So basically, I have to either become president or leave my country to be secure. This is not theology. This is narrative weaponry designed to override empathy, justify violence, neutralize dissent. And it's programmed to trigger when someone breaks the script. That's why you're often called anti-Semitic for merely asking, why are we funding apartheid? Why are we backing genocide? How they fight dissent. Use Christian guilt. Bless Israel or curse your soul. Exploit Holocaust trauma to silence criticism of modern wars. And here's what's interesting. Before the war started and I was on Threads, once the war started, a lot of the white guys that followed me started attacking me and calling me anti-Semitic. I found that fascinating. I posted and I said, there's a lot of guys on here. There's a lot, not guys, but a lot of people. There's a lot of folks on here who are trolls who know exactly where we are headed. And instead of telling us what's going on, instead of telling us that we were headed toward this war with Iran, they are trolling us on social media, trying to make it seem like we don't know what's going on. Flood the media with feel-good Israeli narratives. They're trying to do that with the war. Weaponize scripture, reframing war as prophecy and critics as satanic. They've turned faith into a firewall, protecting a state ideology that openly commits ethnic cleansing. And they're trying to do it, well, they are. They're doing it in Jesus' name. Christian Zionism isn't Christianity. It's a coded end times program running behind American politics. Think of it as the Amalek DLC, downloadable content installed onto U.S. Christianity. It didn't come from Jesus, it came from the Schofield Bibles, funded think tanks, and Cold War era psyops. Coming up next, part 3, how to break the spell, fighting back with strategy, intelligence, and spirit. Another email to read. This one was not sent. This one was in my drafts. It was written 11/2/23. Underneath this war in Israel is an intent to dismantle the United States. The far right are literally salivating at the thought of taking over the United States for Jesus. Has anyone asked themselves why the Christian right are helping Israel and not Ukraine? I think a lot of you guys knew the answer to this. Jesus' return is supposed to be in Israel, and Putin is part of their Magog prophecy they're acting out. This is me asking questions to the media, because I'm still wondering what's up with the Magog prophecy, because the Middle East has a central role in this cosplay. They're drawing our attention into 2 wars while actively working with MAGA GOP to dismantle the United States. 11/2/23. Okay, and now here is an email that I wrote to the Rachel Maddow Show. This one was sent October 13th of 2017. What I'm doing is showing, you know what, when you have an ecosystem, it is best to hear the voices of, you don't want to hear the voices of everyone, but you want all voices represented, if you will. So, because then you can do something called situational leadership. There are going to be situations where a white man is not the best leader. Why? Because he is the thing that is closest to the power source that is trying to take us over. So he can't be the dominant narrator of helping us get out of here. Will there be a time when he will lead again? Absolutely. Are you kidding me? For sure. So here we go. October 13th, 2017, written to the Rachel Maddow Show. These are my thoughts. Hi, Rachel and team. I've thought for a while that it is probable that the administration and whoever is supporting him are trying to create a Western Spring in this country across the Western world. Do you all think it's within the realm of possibility that the Tom Prices of the admin are fleecing America on purpose? Now, at this point in 2017, I was watching Trump's admin, and I said, it looks to me like they are doing things intentionally to piss off the American people, to piss off the base. They're fleecing the American people on purpose. Trump is doing it as well. But do you think it's within the realm of possibility that it's a strategy to enrage the left and the right and to get people to turn on their government? They do this while stoking and playing to their base, whom they know will support them. This is automatically creating a schism between groups. How large is their support really? Is their level of support being inflated by bots and trolls? These are questions that I'm asking. Maybe someone can take a look at the variables that are present during the Arab Spring, that were present during the Arab Spring. This is the important part. It ties in with Tucker. Also, has anyone looked into Michelle Bachmann's trip to Russia right before Crimea was taken? Or before Russia invaded Ukraine? I'm not sure which it is. Michelle Bachmann is on the President's Evangelical Council and came back from Russia praising Putin for his good Christian values. The evangelicals are willing to hold up Trump. Are they willing to also hold up Putin? Yes, we found that out. Yes. Is there a relationship between the evangelical right, the desire for a Christian nation, and Putin proclaiming himself to be the last bastion of Christian morality? These are questions and wonderings. I am curious if they fit into the larger picture of what's going on. Is there a group trying to create a Western Spring in this country for the purpose of taking over the country? It seems so. If there is, what countermeasures can be taken? Remember, this was written October 13th, 2017. Is the Trump and men creating crisis when it comes to services offered to citizens by way of healthcare and response to natural disasters so that people again turn on their government? It seems like they are trying to create a scarcity of services to anger people. They will either turn on each other or help each other. We must help each other because they are creating the ecosystem, and they have for a very long time. I know since 1979, they're creating the ecosystem for us to turn on each other. So far, listen, thankfully, we have seen people move to help each other, and this is what we see the American people do every single time. It seems like they're trying to create a sense of scarcity in our country. Scarcity of resources creates desperation. Desperation leads to people turning on on the ones in power. People innocent men have said again and again that they want to dismantle our government. Why are we letting it happen? It's like a slow-moving infection. You let it get too deep and it will be hard to recover. It's beginning to feel like it's getting too deep. This was October of 2017. This is real. This is me talking to the media. This is real. This is happening. And if you all think that the evangelical right and their very rich partners will end with what has happened so far, they will not. They're only just getting started. They will get comfortable with their wins, and their fanaticism will take hold. Historically, this has happened before. I pray for the people in all branches of government and in public life whose job it is to forewarn us about such things. My prayers with you. My prayers are with you and your team. We're going to need some divine intervention on this one. Again, October 13th of 2017. And this one is tying to, when we're asking questions, what is happening and has been happening to the right? You need to go and look up some of the videos that I've done and other people have done on the Schofield Bible and how it was injected into the Christian community. It was written in 1909. So this has been going on for a very, very, very long time. Such that folks were groomed from childhood to do what they're doing now. They don't know anything else. So they don't know anything else. And so in an ecosystem like that, where you know there is a force trying to take it over, you have to suspend your belief or beliefs about other people. So in 2016, when I started seeing the narrative that was being handed to me about the right, I rejected it. I kept saying, they're trying to get me to hate them. Those are not my enemies. Those are Republicans who are our opponents and not our enemy. But the overwhelming narrative from the media was intended to get the left to hate on the right, to think them stupid, to think them idiots, to think them that, to think them that. And catch this. This is the group that has been targeted for radicalization, religiously speaking and messianically speaking, to have their minds and their ideology bound to Israel. So calling them stupid, calling them idiots, believing the lie about them helps Israel, helps Putin, helps anyone trying to sow discord in our country. So what you have to do, like the right, you guys, you have to suspend what you've been told about us. The left are raised to believe that the right, again, I've already said it. You're overly religious, you're this, you're that, you're idiots, you're dumb, this is coming from the media. Now, tell me if you were raised on the right, tell me what you were taught about Democrats, because the messaging about Democrats that I started picking up early on was that Democrats were evil. That's coming from Israel.
The greatest case for demonic activity, and you know me, I'm very, very pragmatic, and I don't get into all the woo-woo stuff. Yeah. I'm not very religious at all. But the greatest case for the devil is the Democratic Party. I've never in my life, every time I look over there and I wonder if God's real sometimes, the fact that the Democratic Party exists and I see some of the things that they're a part of and the things that they stand behind and push, the people groups that they exploit is the greatest case for the devil, which in turn is the greatest case for the existence of God. There is evil in that party and they're under the influence of demonic.
What are we doing? I laid down to read Harry Potter with my daughter last night, and while I was waiting, I saw a video of Trump talking about the enemy from within. Me. He's talking about me. He said we have extreme leftists who might need to be shot on election day by the National Guard or even the military. He's talking openly about the military going through cities on election day and either detaining or potentially killing Democratic voters. I'm a white suburban dad and husband. I have 2 kids. My kids go to public school. I have a dog and 2 cats. I love them all. And I'm the person he's talking about. It's not somebody else. There's nobody else. Those socialist extreme things that I want are paid time off for new parents, affordable healthcare, good jobs, clean, safe cities. These are the things. It's not this noise that he's hearing in his head, which I think he hears a lot of these days. It's just regular stuff that helps people get ahead. It's these commercials he's running about trans, undocumented immigrants getting sex changes or whatever. I don't know who he's hanging out with. It's like he's been in this echo chamber of insane people for so long that he thinks that that's what the United States is. But it's not. It's me. It's my kids. My neighbor across the street is a MAGA Republican. He watches our house when we go camping. We're all regular people here, except for Trump. And it's not a joke. He's not joking. In 2020, he told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, and then he told them to fight like hell to overturn the election results. And they did. And he didn't do anything to stop it. I wish that he was using this as a metaphor, but I don't think he could spell the word metaphor, let alone use one. And it's on Republicans to stop this. Black people, Hispanic people, Asian people, gay people, liberal, educated, white people, we're all voting for Kamala Harris. There's a small group of very confused, very angry white voters without college degrees who are voting for Trump still. And I have to ask you people, if you're one of those people, do you want to kill me? Do you want to kill your neighbors? Do you want to kill people for disagreeing with you politically? Because I don't. I don't want to hurt my neighbor. I don't want to hurt him. I don't want to hurt anybody, and I won't. But it sounds like you guys, you do, and you will.
You know, I found that one of the reasons why I wrote emails to the media, I wrote emails to the media for 7 years, forecasting, it's because a lot of the things that was coming to me didn't belong in the field yet. And so that's one of the reasons why I am currently writing. I currently write a couple of people, and I write them because I want the data to be handled with care. Our legislators who have been MK Ultra, some of them, because you better believe some of them have fought this. we have to handle this with care without allowing them to lead us into attacking ourselves. Because that is what I saw happening in 2016. What I saw happening was myself, I was fully on the left at the time, not on the left. I was on the left, right? I was going to say the same left, but folks on the left have known what's been going on, so I stand corrected. Lost my train. So what I saw, so I stand corrected. I was going to say the sane left, because the left have been narrated as not sane. But here's the reality. Those guys on the left, they're the ones who've been more awake than most of us. So I stand corrected. The thing about being awake is you have to have a narrative. You have to have a narrative, and it can't be screaming, and it has to be a networked narrative. So I stand corrected, and let's get this narrative right. Left, right, I don't care where you come from. I don't care where you come from. Don't care. Don't care if you've been a Zionist. Don't care if you've been on the far left. We need everybody across the board sitting at this table, throwing in their ideas and helping us narrate our way through what is happening. Because what has gotten us here has been a narrative. So the only thing that's going to get us through is a narrative. And so what I saw happening in the very beginning, right, 2016, I'm aware that something is influencing us because I'm watching my friends change. And I'm starting to be really irritated with them online. I said to my wife, I said, you know what? Our friends are really irritating the crap out of me. And I feel like I want to grab back at them. Where that wasn't there before, right? There is a stark change on social media from us not fighting to us fighting. And so what the narrative that was being pumped to us from the left, MSNBC, CNN, was that the MAGA, GOP, Tea Party folks were incompetent, that they didn't know what they were doing, that the strategy was to make fun of them. And here's the thing about having a strategy of making fun of a group of people who are actively trying to take over the country. Okay, we officially live in a goddamn simulation. Because did you hear what I just said? We live in a simulation. There's no way. There's no way. Okay, so anyway, simulation or not, we got to get through this. So it doesn't matter. You're right. At this point, we got to just kind of say it doesn't matter what this is. We'll find out along the way. So the narrative, I just told you about the narrative that was being fed to me. And so what I did was I rejected it. Not all out. And I rejected it because I began to see folks on the left changing. Folks I was getting along with, I was no longer able to get along with. The emails that I began writing in 2017 said something very, very clear. There is something in our ecosystem that is trying to divide us. It is painting Democrats as evil and Republicans as silly. You see how neither narrative was great for either group. Neither narrative for the left or the right has been good from the media about who we are. Do you know at some point in the emails, this is what I started saying. I don't know who the fuck is narrating about the American people, but they don't know who we are. When there is a global tragedy, the American people fucking step up every single time. Whoever is doing this does not know us. They don't know us. And because They don't know us. And that was the intensity that I had in the emails. The intensity I had in the emails was we defend ourselves no matter what. We defend ourselves offensively and defensively. And we narrate ourselves. We narrate who we are. We narrate whether or not we want to go to war. My father was in the military. And I'm not talking to my family right now. I will be talking to my family soon. I just needed to get through this time period. I needed to understand what was going on. I needed to understand what was injecting itself into my household when I was growing up. Painting itself like it was a friend, but it was actually an enemy of my family. Let's go. This religion saying that it was going to save me. And the only thing that it did was attempt to feed into my mind ideas that were against me and my family. I'm going to stop now because I'm getting on my little soapbox. Listen. In order to get through, I'll stop here. In order to get through what I did in 2017, was I made a decision not to believe the lie being told about Republicans. I made a decision not to believe the lie being told about white men and women. I made a decision not to believe the lie being told about Muslims. And a lot of you have done the same thing. You've done the exact same thing. That's one of the most important ways we get through. We make the decision not to believe the lie about our neighbor. And you want to know what? When you marched, it's exactly what you were doing. So guess what? It may not look like we're doing anything. It may not look like we've accumulated enough strength to say we don't want this, but it's happening. Keep going. Keep going. And remember this. One of the reasons why you're starting to listen to Tucker and Candace and other individuals that, way back when we used to be able to hear each other. Someone got in between us and started throwing social bombs at each other. And we took it in and we believed it. And we're ending that. That's what's happening. And we're taking our voice back as Americans. That's what's happening.
All of the culture war propaganda, it's bait. It's all fake. I'm watching videos by Daniel Schmidt and John Doyle. I'm watching videos by young white guys who think that our country is being run by black bureaucrats. Young white radicals who have been screwed out of a future. Their future has been mortgaged. This is a country financed by debt. No one is deflating this global debt bubble. We are all going to pay the cost. And they have been tricked by billionaires into taking out their anger at black people. But they are not the planners and the managers of our society. And yet, young white radicals, all of their righteous indignation and anger is being channeled and directed at Democrats. It's being directed at bureaucrats in the federal government. Everything is being channeled as an attack against DEI, as an attack against some such policy like that. Don't look at the billionaires that are funding this. Don't look too closely at Musk and Thiel and Andreessen and Adelson. Don't look at those people. It's the black and brown bodies in the Department of Education. They're the problem. What? It's not even about the right and the left. Fuck the right and the left. It's not about right and left. It's about, are you with our civilization? Are you with Jesus? Are you with America? Those are the questions that matter. Israel's against all of them. Israel's against America. Israel is against the church. They're against Christ. They're against our civilization. They always have been.
I want to talk about the Gog-Magog connection to the book of Revelation. There is a lot of debate out there as to where the Gog-Magog war fits on the timetable. Is it in the middle of the tribulation or the end of tribulation? God's word clears this up for us, and I want to share with you what the Lord has shown me through taking me to various scriptures. And as we compare scripture to scripture, I think you will see this too. So the first text we want to read is Ezekiel 38, 19 through 23. In my zeal and fiery wrath, I declare that at the time there shall be a great earthquake in the land of Israel. The fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the beasts of the field, every creature that moves along the ground, and all the people on the face of the earth will tremble at my presence. The mountains will be overturned, the cliffs will crumble, and every wall will fall to the ground. I will summon a sword against Gog on all my mountains, declares the sovereign Lord. Every man's sword will be against his brother. I will execute judgment on him with plague and bloodshed. I will pour down torrents of rain, hailstones, and burning sulfur on him, and on his troops, and on the many nations with him. And so I will show my greatness and my holiness, and I will make myself known in the sight of many nations. Then they will know that I am the Lord. Now let's read from Revelation chapter 16, 17 through 21, and notice the similarities. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came out of the temple of heaven from the throne, saying, It is done. And there were noises and thunderings and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such a mighty and great earthquake as had not occurred since men were on the earth. Now the great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell. And great Babylon was remembered before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Then every island fled away, and the mountains were not found. And a great hail from heaven fell upon men, each hailstone about the weight of a talent. Men blasphemed God because of the plague of the hail, since that plague was exceedingly great. So let's take away some of the similarities between the 2 texts. In Ezekiel, we read here that there was a great earthquake in the land of Israel in verse 19. As also in Revelation 16, verses 18 through 19, we read that there's a great earthquake in Jerusalem. It said that all creation shakes at his presence in Ezekiel. And in Revelation, it said, a loud voice with noises, thunderings, and lightnings came from heaven. It says in Ezekiel that the mountains were thrown down and the steep places fall. And then we read in Revelation that every island fled away and the mountains were not found. It also says that great hail from heaven, about 75 pounds each, was a plague that was given in Revelation. And in Ezekiel, flooding, rain, great hailstones, fire, and brimstone fell. It also says in Revelation that a voice from heaven says, It is done. In Ezekiel 39 verse 8, Surely it is coming, and it shall be done, says the Lord. So you can obviously see there's too many similarities to ignore, that there is a tie between these 2 texts. In Ezekiel 38, this happens when Gog comes against the land of Israel, hence the Gog-Magog invasion. In Revelation 16, this is the 7th bowl, and this seems to precede the second coming of Christ. Notice in the preceding bowl, the 6th bowl, the kings of the earth are gathered to the battle of the great day of God Almighty in the valley of Armageddon, Revelation 16, verses 14 through 16. The earthquake is so mighty that it throws down the mountains. This is in both accounts, both in Ezekiel's account of Gog and Magog and in Revelation's account of Armageddon. A mighty earthquake levels the mountains. This can only happen once. Could the Gog-Magog battle be a part of this final battle of Armageddon? And then Israel is seen burying the dead and bringing the weapons for 7 years? Quote, Then those who dwell in the cities of Israel will go out and set on fire and burn the weapons, both the shields and the bucklers, the bows and arrows, the javelins and spears, and they will make fires with them for 7 years. And then it says in verse 12, For 7 months the house of Israel will be burying them in order to cleanse the land. Now notice that the valley of Armageddon is surrounded by the mountains of Israel. If you look at this map, this is where the final battle will go down and Christ will show forth his glory. Many have thought that the final battle of Armageddon has no ties whatsoever to the Gog-Magog war. But if we compare Scripture with Scripture, it seems that there is. Notice some other connections. Quote, You shall fall upon the mountains of Israel, you and all your troops, and the peoples who are with you. I will give you to the birds of prey of every sort, and to the beasts of the field to be devoured. We find that in Ezekiel 39, verse 4. Then turn to Revelation 19, verses 17 through 18. Then I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the birds that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather together for the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses and of those who sit on them, and the flesh of all the people, free and slave, both small and great. And then it says in verse 21, And the rest were killed with the sword which proceeded from the mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh. Notice another connection, that panic strikes the armies of the men. In both accounts, God sends a panic on the wicked, which causes them to attack one another. In the Gog-Magog battle, it says in Ezekiel 38, verse 21, And I will call for a sword against him throughout all my mountains, says the Lord. Every man's sword shall be against his brother. And then we find in Zechariah 14, verse 13, in the battle of Armageddon. In Zechariah chapter 14, the prophet gives an account of what happens on the day of the Lord, the day that Jesus comes back to fight against the combined armies of the earth at Armageddon. And it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them, and they shall lay a hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. When we take Scripture and compare it with Scripture, that this in fact is most likely the same battle, which says that this will happen at the end, the very end of the 7-year tribulation period, in the seventh bowl, right before Christ comes back, or will be a part of Christ's judgment in the second coming.
The Bible says that this attack at the end of time will come on Israel from the north and the south, and that will be the final war, the war to end all wars that will usher in the end of time. Now here's the question. Are we entering into that war right now?
No.
In Ezekiel 38 and 39, it mentions nations Gog and Magog.
It most certainly does not mention the nations Gog and Magog. It says there is a person, Gog, from the land of Magog. Slater got confused so that by the time of the 1st century, the author of the book of Revelation could talk about Gog and Magog, but only then as agents, still not as different nations. Getting to how this guy interprets the passage is like trying to trace a line of the game of telephone that's been going on for 2,500 years.
That's that would be like modern day Russia.
Gog and Magog have nothing to do with Russia. Name Gog was quite possibly based on the name of the king Gyges from Lydia in the 7th century BC. Magog was probably chosen as his land just to make it rhyme. Names are not correlated with any particular place in the world, and certainly not Russia.
It also mentions Persia in Ezekiel 38 and 39. That corresponds to modern day Iran.
I mean, if you squint your eyes tight enough to close them, it could correlate to anything. Generally, no, modern day nation states are not the same things as ancient empires.
What we do know is that if Iran enters the war, that Turkey and Russia will probably go with them. Right behind them will be North Korea and China.
Who Ezekiel says will be involved in this war is Ethiopia. Why is he ignoring that and claiming instead it's going to be Turkey, North Korea, and China? Number one, he really doesn't care what the Bible says about this. And number two, he obviously has no understanding of international affairs.
And if all of the world powers start attacking from the north and the south, start trying to attack Israel, that could be the war to end all wars.
The whole Gog and Magog thing is just a passage saying that God will face down evil at the end. Trying to use this as a map to interpret current events just inevitably makes people look stupid. In the 1st century, the Jewish historian Josephus claimed that this was about the Scythian Empire, which was a threat to the Alexandrian Greek Empire. Across the medieval period, it was interpreted to be about the Vikings, the Huns, the Cathars, and the Mongols. It was only in the 12th century that it got interpreted to be about the Kievian Rus, the Slavic group that was gathered around Kiev. After that, it was interpreted to be about the fight between Napoleon and the Russians. Contemporary crazy Christians often associated with Russia and Iran. That's much more about their own neuroses than it is about the Bible.
There's a lot of hope in Ezekiel 38 and 39. The Lord himself, Jesus Christ, will descend. He will take the battlefield and he will win the war once and for all.
And Ezekiel most certainly doesn't say anything like that because it doesn't know anything about Jesus. We, however, know that Jesus is disappointed. These people should stop it.
Taking people out of Palestine is such an inconvenient story today.
Really glad to see that Joe Rogan is continuing to speak out about what's happening in Palestine. You've got Candace Owens, you've got Ian Carroll, you've got Dave Smith, you've got Greenwald, you've got Abby, you've got who else? Speaking out about what's happening in Gaza to the Palestinians. Now listen, one of the things that he said was, no one wants to talk about it. I don't really think he meant that the way that I heard it, but I want to address it because it's not a true statement. It's not true that people don't want to talk about it or haven't been talking about it. The left has been talking about this for decades. Black people, Farrakhan, Joe Rogan. Why don't you listen to Mr. Farrakhan? See what he has to say, and then what? Listen now, because if you go back to the Schofield Bible being injected into the Christian community, if you go back to the stories I've told about my family come across really angry white boys, like you are young. Why are you so angry? Like you have lived 50 lifetimes. Too angry, unnatural. So the anger, at the age of 10, I understood that the anger coming out of young white boys was unnatural. Such that when one of them burned a cross on Halloween while wearing a KKK outfit, because his parents were going to one of those Christian churches that Zionists had their hand in. If you were one of these young boys, you were, by definition, chosen for Mossad's pretend world to play the role of the moat for them. A moat, right, is the thing that creates the space between a castle and the king's enemies.
We create a pretend world. We are a global production company. We write the screenplay. We're the directors. We're the producers. We're the main actors. The world is our stage.
This is Mossad's old office. Its motto from Proverbs 24:6 says in so many words, wage war through deception and trickery.
White people were radicalized in America to be the moat for Israel. And being the moat for Israel means that you, by definition, are going to be radicalized to be against diversity in your own country. So I'm glad to see that Rogan is waking up, because the left, specifically the squad, which was targeted by Netanyahu specifically came to America, to Congress, to go after the left. And he used that ecosystem on the right that Joe Rogan is a part of. I'm glad he's waking up.
My dad is a Palestinian refugee.
Yeah, you were telling me the story, and I want to get into that because it's kind of crazy. Like, tell the whole story of how this wound up happening.
Yeah. So my family is originally from Haifa, which is now in Israel, and they were expelled as part of the 1948 Nakba, where Palestinians were sort of kicked out, and they went to like.
How does your dad describe that? How old was he when that was going on?
My grandma and my grandpa and my uncles were kind of kicked out, and the way they would describe that is they try to fight, they try to like keep their home, but it was like this overwhelming force. They weren't organized. They were just like people. They didn't really have an army, at least in that place, and eventually at gunpoint they took their homes and told them to go. If you're down south, you went to Gaza, and that's why like 70% of Gazans are refugees from Israel. Like the people that are getting massacred right now are originally from Israel, from the land that people call Israel today. And then if you're in the north, like Haifa or Jaffa, whatever, you went like to Lebanon, or to the West Bank, or to Jordan or to Syria. So my family went to Syria.
whole thing we're kicking people out of Palestine is such an inconvenient story today. When people are talking about Israel and Palestine and the conflict, they do not like talking about what happened in 1948.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like I think for us to reach some kind of peace, which is really hard to talk about when you see what's happening in Gaza, even yesterday.
The people that were waiting for food got bombed.
Yeah,
it's insane, and no one wants to talk about it.
Right, but if you
do talk about it, you're anti-Semitic, which is so strange. Like I don't know how they wrangled that.
It's been hard for me in tech because like probably the only prominent Palestinian in tech that is talking about it, and so that's.
Do you get pushback?
Oh, of course.
Lots of what do people say to you?
Anti-Semitic.
How is it anti-Semitic? What they've done to Gaza is fucking insane.
It's insane.
And if you can't see that, if you can't say that, and your response is, Israel has the right to defend itself. Like, what are you talking about? Against what? Children?
Right.
Against women and children that are getting blown apart? Against aid workers that are getting killed?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, we can't have a rational conversation if you're not willing to address that.
Now, I know what they do because I used to ask them to do it. I mean, when I was in the Mossad, and we had a guy that gave us problems in the U.S., and he was speaking out, and he was talking like Pete talked once and said, Israel is bombing Lebanon with cluster bombs. We say, hey, who's that guy? And of course the campaign starts, and before you know it, the guy's labeled. And he's an anti-Semite, because that's what we say he is.
It's a trick, we always use it. When from Europe somebody is criticizing Israel, then we bring up the Holocaust. When in this country people are criticizing Israel, then they are anti-Semitic.
I own you. You're my bitch. So don't walk around here thinking you have free will, because you don't. I can crush you anytime I want. So settle in, because you are here for the long haul.
Israel. Well, there's a history, and a very interesting one. It actually goes back a long time. One thing to remember is that Christian Zionism is a very powerful force, which goes back long before Jewish Zionism. In England particularly, Christian Zionism was a powerful force among British elites. It's part of the motivation for the Balfour Declaration and for Britain's support for Jewish colonization of Israel. Remember, the Bible said, and that's a big part of British elite culture. Same in the United States. Woodrow Wilson was a devout Christian who read the Bible every day. So did Harry Truman. In the Roosevelt administration, one of the leading officials, Harold Ickes, once described the return of the Jews to Palestine as the greatest event in history. It's realizing the lesson of the Bible. These are deeply religious countries in which the biblical commands, so-called, are taken quite literally. Also, this is just part of colonization. This is the last phase of European colonization. And notice that the countries that are most strongly in support of Israel are not just the United States. It's the United States, Australia, and Canada, the offshoots of England, Anglosphere sometimes called, unusual forms of imperialism. These are settler colonial societies, societies in which not like India, not like the British in India, say, societies, South Africa was a little like this, or Algeria under the French, settler colonial societies in which the settlers came in, essentially eliminated the native population, also driven by religious principles, very religious groups driven by Christian Zionism. Those are major cultural factors. There are also significant geostrategic factors. You go back to 1948, there was actually a split between the State Department and the Pentagon in the United States over how to react to the new state of Israel. The State Department was not committed strongly to Israeli conquests, the establishment of the state, and was concerned about the refugees. It wanted an implementation of the refugee problem. The Pentagon, on the other hand, was very impressed with Israel's military potential. The Israeli military successes, if you look back at the internal record and declassified, the Joint Chiefs of Staff described Israel as the second largest military force in the region after Turkey and a potential base for U.S. power in the region. That continued. Can't run through the whole record, but in 1958, when there was a serious crisis in the region, Israel was the only state that strongly cooperated with Britain and the United States, and it won plenty of support from the governments and the military for that reason. 1967 is when the current relations with Israel were pretty much established. Israel performed a major service to the United States by destroying a secular Arab nationalism, a major enemy of the United States, and supporting radical Islam, which the U.S. supported. And it continues right until the present. Right now, we saw an example of that just during the latest Gaza attack. You recall that at one point, Israel began to run out of munitions during the assault, despite the fact that it's armed to the teeth. The United States provided Israel with additional munitions through the Pentagon. And notice where they were taken from. These were U.S. munitions pre-positioned in Israel for eventual use by U.S. forces. One of many signs of how Israel is regarded as essentially a military offshoot of the United States. Very close intelligence relations that go way back, many other connections. And the media tend to take up, to support the policy of the government with very few, kind of little questioning around the edges, but basically accept the policy. So, for example, take another issue. Take the U.S. invasion of Iraq. You cannot find the phrase U.S. invasion of Iraq in the U.S. media, though it was obviously an invasion, a blatant act of aggression, a textbook case of, that's Nuremberg trials called the supreme international crime, cannot be mentioned. President Obama is praised as an opponent of the invasion. And what did he say? He said it's a mistake. It's a strategic blunder. We're not going to get away with it. That's the kind of opposition that you heard from the German General Staff during Hitler's invasion of Russia. It's a blunder. Shouldn't do it. We should knock off England first. That's regarded as opposition. Same in Vietnam. There's now a commemoration underway, big commemoration of U.S. sacrifices in Vietnam. Try to find the phrase U.S. invasion of South Vietnam there or anywhere in the past year since 1961 when it took place. Non-existent, maybe on Democracy Now, what I write, but way out at the fringe. And this is not unique to the United States. Take, say, Britain. Right now there's interesting debates in the British literary journals, like the Times Literary Supplement, as to whether Britain should finally begin to recognize the genocidal, the word that's used, genocidal character of British colonization hundreds of years ago. Should Britain begin to face it? You can ask that question in many places. The tendency of the intellectual community to go along like a herd in support of state power, private power, is just overwhelming. Intellectuals like to think of themselves as dissident, critical, courageous, standing up against power. Absolutely untrue. You look at the historical record, that's a small fringe, and they're usually punished. The mainstream tends to be what was once called a herd of independent minds, marching in support of state power. Nothing new here. Unfortunate, you have to fight against it.
I think it's about time we stop those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Were there not an Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. I am with my colleagues who are on the floor in the Foreign Relations Committee, and we worry at length about NATO. And we worry about the eastern flank of NATO, Greece and Turkey, and how important it is. They pale by comparison. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel. The second part is people should understand by now, this should be crystal clear, that Israel is the single greatest strength America has in the Middle East. I always say to my friends when they say those things to you, I say, imagine our circumstance in the world were there no Israel. How many battleships would there be? How many troops would be stationed? You know, I used to say early on when I was a kid, I'd say, when I was a young senator, I'd say, if I were a Jew, I'd be a Zionist. I am a Zionist. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. Progress occurs in the Middle East when everyone knows there's simply no space between the United States and Israel. There is no space between the United States and Israel when it comes to Israel's security. There is only one nation in the world that has unequivocally, without hesitation, and consistently confronted the efforts to delegitimize Israel. At every point in our administration, at every juncture, we've stood up on behalf of legitimacy of the State of Israel.
The security of Israel and the United States is inextricably tied, and we will never, ever, ever abandon Israel out of our own self-interest. I also emphasize what I've said throughout this conflict. The United States fully supports Israel's right to defend itself against indiscriminate rocket attacks from Hamas and other Gaza-based terrorist groups that have taken the lives of innocent civilians in Israel.
I have said to people when they ask me if this capital crumbled to the ground, the one thing that would remain is our commitment to our aid, and I don't even call it aid, our cooperation with Israel. That's fundamental to who we, to...
Of course, Nancy, no one doubts where your loyalties lie. They're with a foreign country.
We will never allow anyone to make Israel a wedge issue. That pledge is proudly honored in this Congress, where support for Israel remains ironclad and bipartisan.
Not to the American people. You didn't help out the Maui wildfire residents, right? But you had tons, billions of dollars to rebuild Ukraine.
Is there a limit for how much support we can give to Ukraine?
No. Is there a limit to our defense of democracy?
You had $14 billion to throw Israel's way as soon as they needed it. Anything they want. No restrictions, no covenants, nothing whatsoever.
We must be crystal clear. We stand with Israel. We stand with Israel.
You're more concerned what happens to a foreign country's capital than you are with the people of this country. Because when the people of this country protested in our capital, you called it an insurrection.
Because our president is not speaking for the American people, and neither are you.
That's your opinion.
It's my opinion.
Well, then sit down. We've heard your opinion. Thank you very much.
You're not going to help the Americans who are struggling with healthcare and inflation. You're going to give billions of dollars to a foreign country and wave it in our face that your loyalty lies to them. And then act like you're shocked and surprised when the American people are protesting in our capital. The fact that the people who run our country don't represent us.
Well, I love Israel. I love Israel.
That their loyalties are to foreign countries. It's literally treason.
States have some very important work to do for Israel. I can identify tonight two very important things that the United States has to do for Israel. There are many more, but there's no need to do more than simply two. In order for Israel to succeed the United States as a ruling state in the world, not only must the US economy collapse and the US dollar collapse, and when the US dollar collapses, it brings down the whole world of paper money with it, and if you don't believe me, just wait. Just wait. Not only must the United States collapse its economy and its money, but in addition, Israel has to wage a big war, which even non-Muslim political analysts are now anticipating. A big war. Even Jews now within Israel, I'm getting emails, even Jews within Israel, Jewish academics who are in opposition to the Sharon government, they are now understanding that there's something big about to happen. And they're warning the world about it. Of course, it's too late now. Israel has to wage this big war, which is already planned long ago. And the territory of the state of Israel.
Breaking news, China is calling out the US and saying that they are being controlled by Israel. A Chinese minister has come out publicly and condemned the United States for their support of Israel's actions in Gaza. And he even suggested that there may be Israeli blackmail on US politicians in order to force the unwavering support. China then reaffirmed their stance of recognizing Palestine and wanting a peaceful solution, and said that the United States' actions are, quote, barbaric, and that Israel is an illegitimate state. North Korea and Russia gave similar stances on this, as Kim Jong-un came out and said that the US is a puppet of Israel. And the Russians came out and strongly condemned the United States' support of Israel and their strikes on Iran, as North Korea and China also said that the US does their, quote, bidding for the evils of the world, in reference to the Israelis. This is very strong words from China, Russia, and North Korea.
When power rests on the foundations of faith, that power recognizes human values to be supreme. Gog and Magog are human beings, but they're human beings who commit facade. Gog and Magog commit facade, meaning they corrupt everything they touch. And the corruption is such, it's so dangerous that it threatens to destroy. They corrupt the political system, they corrupt the economy, they corrupt the market, they corrupt the monetary system, they corrupt the educational system, they corrupt the system of time, they corrupt the relationship between men and women, they corrupt a woman's role in society and a woman's role in a marriage, they corrupt it. The corruption is such that it threatens to destroy. So society will collapse, will disintegrate.
Well, you know, when I say that the West lies all the time, I'm not saying that as an insult. I'm not just lashing out at the West or something. No, you have to understand, this is factually accurate. It's true. And there are massive, complex ramifications from this fact. Do you understand? There are whole systems of thought, systems of government based on those systems of thought. Academic disciplines, fields of study, economic, political, societal frameworks, and interpretive paradigm for understanding the world, all of which we have adopted. We've adopted it and taken it seriously, and all of that has been built by and for a so-called civilization that lies about everything. This is a disaster. I don't think you understand. It was never about building a sound structure. It was always just a cover-up. Your sociology, your economics, your political philosophy, your political science, your theories of this and that and the other. No, it turns out it was all just a cover-up. So-called white people in America know a version of history. They know a story. They know a narrative that has been carefully crafted to shape how they see themselves, how they see their ancestors, how they see their nations and their place in the world, and how they see everyone else. And this ignorance, this deliberate miseducation that they have imposed upon their own people allows the same crimes to continue. What most white people in America and Europe believe about their history is not history at all. It's mythology, designed to produce a specific kind of person. A person who does not feel guilty, a person who does not feel accountable, a person who does not feel responsible for ever changing anything because they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They're taught that their ancestors were pioneers, their ancestors were explorers and builders of civilization, that they've brought progress and democracy and enlightenment to the world. They hear about the Renaissance, they hear about the Industrial Revolution, they hear about the Age of Discovery, and so forth and so on. And not about enslavement, not about genocide, not about the theft, not about the destruction that their people are responsible for. They're not taught that their prosperity was built on unimaginable suffering. They're not taught that their systems of government, their financial empires, their very sense of national identity are all rooted in exploitation. They don't know about the crimes. They don't know the real legacy of their people. And so they don't change. They don't have to change because they don't even realize what they need to correct. You know, when we look at colonialism, for example, the history that's taught in Western schools is usually an abstraction. Colonization is framed as something that it just sort of happened a long time ago, you know, something that was maybe unfortunate, but it was inevitable, and ultimately it represented progress, and there were many beneficial things to come from it. Never mind the millions of Africans who died in the Congo Free State under King Leopold. Most white Americans have never heard of them. Never mind the Bengal famine of 1943 when millions of Indians starved to death due to British policies. They don't even know about it. The fact that the American police forces evolved from slave patrols, they don't know about that either. And they're not any more informed about the ongoing crimes, like the pillage of African resources today, the economic neocolonialism that keeps entire regions of the world impoverished, the exploitation of labor in the global south. These aren't relics of history. That's the present day reality of what your people are doing. But the story that the white people are told does not include those realities, or else it packages those realities deceitfully and dishonestly. They package them dishonestly and deceitfully in the past just like they do now. The irony is that when they're confronted with the truth, many of these people will react defensively, you know. I didn't do that. That was in the past. Why should I feel guilty? But this reaction in and of itself reveals how little they're really understanding. It's not about guilt. It's about responsibility. You know, if a person inherits a stolen house, they may not have stolen it themselves, but they still live in it. And if they refuse to acknowledge where that house came from or how it came into their possession, if they insist that that house is rightfully theirs because the crime happened a long time ago, well, then they're complicit because the theft is ongoing. The crime never really stopped. So when people don't know their history, they cannot recognize when history is repeating itself and when history is actually just a continuum into the present. This is why so-called white people in America can watch their government arm and support genocide in Gaza, bomb Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and so on, and actually believe when they say it's for the purpose of security. They don't see the colonial mindset at work. That's why they can see corporations, for example, Western corporations, strip mine Africa for resources and not connect that to the centuries of plunder that came before, which just means that we're not even talking about past crimes. We're talking about ongoing crimes from the past until today. Like I said, it's a continuum. If there's ever going to be any real change, if there's ever going to be any hope for justice, then so-called white people have to actually learn your history. Not the history that makes you feel proud and makes you feel good, that makes you feel comfortable, but real history, the history that makes you uncomfortable, the history that you've denied all this time. And only when white people know their real history, really know it, then maybe they can begin to take the first steps towards repairing the damage that that history caused. The damage that it caused to millions upon millions of people all around the world, including themselves. You know, I said that every missile that Israel launches against Gaza actually lands in America, and it's blowing the whole society apart. I mean, everything about that so-called culture, that so-called civilization, which is actually nothing but a torture chamber for their own citizens, a torture chamber for the minds of their citizens, for their psyches, for their souls. It's being dismantled because of Gaza. You know, you've been imposing lies on your population for decades. No, for centuries. Inflicting cognitive dissonance on your people for centuries. Keeping your people boxed in a tight cage of ideological manipulation. It's like every individual citizen in your society is in some sort of an isolation cell that has beautiful pictures projected on the walls, just to lull them into thinking that they aren't imprisoned. You know, freedom, democracy, prosperity, upward mobility. You can be anything you dream of, so on and so on, etc., etc. All of this is being projected on the walls of their jail cells in America, in the collective West. And they can look at it, but they can't really go into it. You know, you can't experience what you're being shown. That's America. It's happy songs being pumped in over loudspeakers to drown out the sound of you and your neighbors weeping. Weeping because maybe their home is being foreclosed upon, or they lost their job, or they can't afford medicine or groceries, or they're being evicted, or because someone that you love has been murdered or assaulted or abducted or raped. It's a dystopian reality constantly being gaslighted by utopian propaganda. According to the average statistics, since October 7th, in the United States, roughly 10,000 Americans have been murdered. Just since October 7th, 200,000 American women have been raped, and over 100,000 children have been abducted. In the United States, just since October 7th, there's been nearly 150,000 home foreclosures since October 7th. Tens of thousands of people have become homeless since then, and even more have become jobless. But on the walls of your prison cell, all you see are projected pictures of wealth, of opulence, of extravagance, fun, happy, perfect, beautiful people living exciting, glamorous lives. Celebrities flaunting their wealth, singers bragging about their riches. That's what you look at all day long, 24 hours a day. Everyone that you're shown is a millionaire or a billionaire, but everyone that you've ever known is struggling financially, you and everyone you know. So there's a massive discrepancy in the reality that you know and the reality that they show.
I mean, take, say, people living under military occupation or under racist regimes and so on. I mean, they have a right to resist. Actually, everyone in the world except the United States and Israel believes they have a right to exist. Mm-hmm. If you look at the UN resolutions.
Talking about Palestine now, yeah.
Palestine or South Africa.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you take a look at the major UN, there are major UN resolutions on terrorism. Mm-hmm. One in 1987, denouncing the plague of international terrorism, calling on everyone to do something to stop it. It passed with 2 negative votes, the United States and Israel. Mm-hmm. The reason was exactly this. They explained it. It said nothing in this resolution will prejudice the right of people to struggle for independence against racist and colonialist regimes and foreign military occupation. That referred to South Africa and Israel. So therefore the United States objected because it is opposed to, it does not grant the right of people to struggle against racist and colonialist regimes and foreign occupation. The U.S. and Israel are alone in that. When the U.S. votes against a resolution, it's out of history. Mm-hmm. So you don't read about it, but it's there. The war against terrorism is new, it's old. The U.S. is alone in opposing it. Now, Grant, I believe that the world is right on this and that the U.S. is wrong. Mm-hmm. There is a right to resist racist and colonialist regimes and foreign military occupation.
It's worse than apartheid. I've never called it apartheid because it's worse than apartheid. South Africa depended on its black population. 85% of the population. They were the workforce. They needed them. South Africa tried actually to get the Bantustans to be recognized, try to make them look viable. Israel doesn't do that with the Palestinians in the occupied territories, just wants to get rid of them. The biblical rights, which have absolutely no status, none. Nobody in the world can say 2,000 years ago, here's my story of what happened, so therefore I have a right to do it now. You can't live in a world like that. Nobody in the world ever makes such a claim. You want to make it? Okay, but then just admit, I'm out of the world. I'm distinct from the world. Now, yes, totally distinct. If you really want to play that game, the Palestinians have more of a right to claim to be descendants of the population from 2,000 years ago than I do. My ancestors probably come from the Caucasus. Their ancestors come from Palestine. The Canaanim were correct about this. So you don't want to get into that game. Biblical rights have no status.
Do you know what Netanyahu's real name is? It's not Netanyahu, it's Milkovsky. I swear to God, go and look it up. You'll find Milkovsky. That's his real name. These are, remember what Israelis are. Israelis are European Jews. They don't come from Palestine. But they want you to make you believe. They want to make believe and make you believe that they come from this area, that they are indigenous to the land, that they're so Jewish.
Who is Netanyahu? Watch this video.
They call themselves Netanyahu, but it's just a stolen name, a Hebrew mask plastered over a European exile's face. His real name was Milikowski, born of Ashkenazi lineage from Poland, Benjamin Netanyahu has neither the blood, nor the land, nor the language of those he claims to represent. His Judaism is not that of the shepherds of Hebron, nor the poets of Jaffa. It is the Judaism of a colonizer from elsewhere who put on the prophet's robe to hide the scent of ashes. Because what he represents today is not a people, it is a machine, a political, military, ideological machine, a machine of steel and contempt. Netanyahu didn't grow up on the banks of the Jordan. He grew up in the salons of New York's conservative elite and the ultra-nationalist sermons of his father, Ben Zion, the hardline Zionist historian. He never spoke Arabic. He never shared bread with a Palestinian. He never had to bury a child beneath the rubble of an Israeli airstrike. He is not from this land. He took it. And yet he decides. He demolishes. He signs the orders. Today, under his rule, Gaza is a graveyard for children. Rafah, a field of ruins. Jenin, a ghost town. And Syria, just yesterday, burned again under Israeli missiles striking the Syrian Ministry of Defense, as if it were just another square on a game board. He has no connection to this region except through fire. He clings to it only through destruction. And what of the other Israelis like him? Those who come from Russia, Germany, Ethiopia, or the United States? They wave the flag of a land they had never set foot on before 1948, a land they later repainted in blood. They claim a birthright torn from others through expropriation, walls, bombs, and racist laws. They carry not a single drop of Palestinian blood, yet claim every hill, every olive tree, every stone. They have no roots here, yet they uproot those who have lived here for centuries. They share no memory with this land, except the one they invented. They Hebraized their names, but their hearts remain foreign to this soil. And to fill that absence, they suffocate it, disfigure it, dominate it. So how do we name this deception? How do we describe this thirst for possession without belonging? It's more than a lie. It's an occupation of history. It's more than a crime. It's a betrayal of humanity. Benjamin Netanyahu is not a leader. He is the frozen mask of a power born of fear, fed by blood and sustained by lies. He does not build a country. He digs graves. When he speaks of security, he means silence. When he speaks of legitimacy, he means erasure. And when he speaks of God, it is only to justify, never to humble himself. But history does not forget. It will write his name, Milakowski, not in the lineage of prophets, but among the ranks of impostors. And it will remind the world that those who had neither the land, nor the soul, nor the memory, tried to erase those who had all of it, simply because they lived.
This is the last phase of European colonization. And notice that the countries that are most strongly in support of Israel are not just the United States. It's the United States, Australia, and Canada. The offshoots of England, Anglosphere sometimes called, unusual forms of imperialism. These are settler colonial societies, societies in which not like India, not like the British in India, say, the societies of South Africa is a little like this, or Algeria under the French. Settler colonial societies in which the settlers came in, essentially eliminated the native population, also driven by religious principles, very religious groups driven by Christian Zionism. Those are major cultural factors.
You're losing. Like, support for you has collapsed because everyone is waking up to the fact that you have run the longest game of propaganda ever. I mean, you look how they attack everybody's mind. The public school system, okay? We are just completely conditioned to believe, like, we talk about World War II. We hardly talk about what the Bolsheviks did. We hardly talk about what happened to the Christians. We're always focused on this belief that Jewish people can only ever be the victims. They can only ever be the victims. If they don't get you in the public school system, because this public school system is failing in 1,000 different ways, but not in emotional conditioning, they're going to get you in Hollywood, movie after movie after movie, given awards, and telling once again another tale about the Holocaust, which pulls at your heartstrings until you go, okay, look, we can never allow this to happen ever again. In the South, and this has been something that has been, I did not expect, but so many people have emailed me and said, Candace, I left the Baptist church, I left whatever Protestant church, because I suddenly started seeing this. Like, how can we justify what Israel is doing? And you have our pastor standing up there saying it is your duty to defend them and just ignore the Holocaust of the Gazans. And so it's awakening people, and they are now getting baptized are being received by the Catholic Church. And so it is having the opposite desired effect. And I think we're now all feeling encouraged and saying, you know what, it doesn't matter what somebody's race is or where they're from. Wrong is wrong. I don't care what your history is. I don't care what your grandma went through. What are you doing right now? Okay. What are you doing right now in the world? What are you contributing right now in the world? How dare you tell me, or any person in America, that not only do I have to send you billions of dollars, but I also am not allowed to criticize a single thing that you do, or you're going to smear me as an anti-Semite?
They'll straight up pass laws in your own country that'll force you not to criticize them.
Yeah, and Trump's been weak on that. He's supported the stuff on the college campuses. It's all crap. So for better or for worse, the MAGA movement is going to change, okay? And there's no question about